If everybody could get situated. It is a very large hall with well over 3,000 trade unionists, social activists, political activists participating in our founding convention of Unifor. So I would ask everybody for their cooperation and respect for one another, because that's incredibly important. I do want to apologize to approximately 500 or 600 people that are listening.
Vamos a empezar transmitiendo aquí sobre el canal español.
Vous ne pouvez pas les recevoir dans cette salle-ci. On aurait préféré pouvoir nous retrouver tous dans cette pièce pour forger des liens de solidarité, d'amitié et de compréhension.
Los invitados, los participantes, los compañeros hispanoparlantes aquí presentes hoy día, a ver si todos ya se ubicaron. A ver si todos están presentes en la sala, si tienen sus aparatos de traducción habilitados y si escuchan aquí la traducción que les emite acá Nicolás. Ojalá que nos escuchen, señores.
This incredible day where we hope to build a movement that will inspire a nation and inspire the world, that the only clear understanding of those that want to establish a middle class, those that want to preserve the middle class, those that want to build hope into greater opportunity to be able to raise their family, raise their standard of living, share in the wealth of their employers, and make progress for their country while they're doing so through the taxes that are paid in service. So at the end of the day, brothers and sisters, the next 12 hours, 14 hours are going to be incredibly important, not only to our combined membership with 300,000 members, but our combined trade union leadership, rank and file members, and those that require a significant voice in which the labor movement provides day in and day out. So to the delegates that are here today on this particular floor in a subsidiary room, the executive officers of both unions want to thank you sincerely for your participation in this great event, coming together, CEP, CAW, to build Unifor. Thank you all very much. Now I would like you just to grab your kit, because in your kit is the agenda. It's a small booklet that kind of is a fold-out jobby. And again, as anybody who has attended a convention, we're going to do everything in our power to stay within the time frames and the scheduled events relative to this agenda. And again, I would ask for everybody's cooperation in doing so, if at all possible. And at this particular time, I'd like to get a mover of the agenda. Moved, supported. All those in favor, raise your hand. Down. Opposed. Looks unanimous. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your cooperation. At this particular time, I would like us all to stand up for a moment of silence to recognize those that have passed away since our last combined convention, and recognize those that have built our great nation, built our great union, and continue to require the support of the trade union activists in this room that each and every day are committed to giving as much time and energy as they possibly can in defense of our members. We mourn those that have been lost since the last convention, but all of us also have a responsibility next minute to think about world peace. There's lots of atrocities going on in the world here today that is insane in 2013. And our message goes out to those workers that are being killed as a result of being trade unionists, those citizens that are being killed because of dictatorial governments. Brothers and sisters, the world is smaller today, but our thoughts are with the most vulnerable and those that need the requirements and the solidarity of our combined unions. Just take a minute to reflect. Hell, let's take another minute. That was the best minute I've had in the last 5 years. Anyway, thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you, brothers and sisters. So after our video, Peter Kennedy will recognize multiple guests that are invited to this historic event. And the guests themselves have played a significant role in the trade union movement, existing leadership affiliated unions that are participating here today, because we know Unifor has a vision, but Unifor cannot, in isolation, move that agenda and move that vision without the solidarity and friendship of so many people in the room, and which Peter will introduce after the video. So without any further ado, I want to introduce a new day between CEP and CAW, and hopefully with the cooperation, total solidarity of our membership, sometime prior to lunch, we can use the name legally, Unifor. Can we see the video, please? The video.
There's a light, and I can see it in your eyes. There's a memory of the way you used to be. Nothing's gone, it still shines every time you turn it up. And when you slow it down,
it's a new day.
De bien ensemble pour Unifor.
We got wonderful people from coast to coast to coast.
people working every night and day. On ne se donne jamais de temps, des factures à l'infini. Modèle, y a rien qui va disparaître si tu te donnes un peu d'espace et suis la musique dans ta tête.
I worry about my kids every day because the world is not giving them the opportunity that I was given when I was their age. That's for sure.
Well, just in Newfoundland and Labrador, a few years ago we had 3 paper mills. Now we're down to 1.
I just look at my parents. My father is a retired CAW worker from Ford. My brother works at Chrysler's, and my mother is now in the hospital. And I look at the pension that enables him to be able to live where he does, the benefits that he needs to be able to pay for the things my mother needs right now. And if that wasn't around, I have a lot of friends that don't have a pension or benefits, and I see how they struggle just to pay for a prescription, and I don't know what they're going to do when they try to retire.
I worked some precarious jobs. I've gotten to experience working 2 or 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And a lot of those jobs that I had were non-union jobs. And I remember busting my butt. And, you know, you didn't have breaks because you had to get the job done. And you felt that if you didn't get it done, you'd be out of a job.
C'est une baisse de nos conditions de travail, c'est une baisse de salaire, c'est une baisse de tout. 44% qui veulent nous enlever.
Il faut comprendre que cette usine-là est rentable. Elle est implantée ici à Bécancour depuis 1976. Et pendant toutes ces années, 99% du temps, l'usine fonctionnait à pleine capacité.
You see certain groups or individuals suggesting that unions are the cause of unemployment or unions are the cause of certain companies failing, and that's not the case at all.
Puis la droite, on peut le voir récemment, là, tout ce qu'ils font, c'est de frapper ces travailleurs, que ce soit... En fait, ça vient toujours du niveau politique, d'où là l'importance de s'impliquer en politique.
We're up against that right-wing corporate agenda, and we're constantly fighting, and why we have the fight for such basic things, I do not know.
mais ça a toujours un impact sur le simple travailleur qui est en bas complètement, qui n'a pas de fonds de pension, qui n'a pas de conditions de santé et sécurité au travail, qui n'a aucune reconnaissance de l'employeur, qui a été juste un numéro, puis c'est tout.
We are being attacked on all sides, and I think it's time to become more active, more united.
I think there's a very important place for unions today. There's quite the divide happening in Canadian society. The rich are getting richer and the middle class is actually eroding. And hopefully this new union will get the message out to everyday Canadians that unions aren't a bad thing, they're actually a very good thing, and we can get more people in the union.
Get the youth on board, get the community on board. What's happening around us calls for something different, and that's where we should go.
Le plus de syndiqués qu'on a dans une société, meilleures sont la qualité de vie.
It's so amazing to belong to a national union because the support, the emotional support we received from other locals coming out and flying their flags, and the donations that they gave to help a lot of these single moms was incredible.
You're part of a family, and being a part of the family, everybody has your back, and when people have your back, things go a little bit smoother.
I get goosebumps thinking about it because we had members walking by and sticking their strike paycheck in somebody else's pocket.
There's always somebody looking out for you, somebody there to back you up.
Je trouve de nos jours, sans un syndicat, les travailleurs sont exploités et abusés, manque de respect et tout. Mais avec un syndicat, on peut garder notre travail plus longtemps et on peut avoir de l'égalité surtout.
Tantôt, on s'est retrouvés en pleine nuit dans la rue, en lockout. On se sent seul. On a trouvé ça quand même assez pénible. Bon, petit à petit, avec le SCEP, on s'est rendu compte qu'on avait énormément d'appui, autant des sections locales que nos dirigeants.
When you're in a new country or a new region, you don't know much about it, and sometimes you don't know when you make some mistakes, and then union is on your side, so it's always good to have a union.
Coming from a non-union environment to a company like this or with a union, the biggest thing for me is keeping, especially young workers, safe.
Eh bien, lorsqu'il y a quelque chose qui nous désavantage ou qu'on n'est pas d'accord selon notre employeur, on peut se retourner vers le syndicat que eux autres sont en mesure de nous donner les outils nécessaires et pouvoir nous protéger. Car tout seul, souvent, on n'est pas capable d'aller.
Most local communities like this and small communities depend on seasonal jobs, whether it be fishing industry, whether it be tourism, whether it be construction. And this is what keeps the communities alive and keeps the communities growing. These are basic things and fundamental things that without our union, I don't think we would have today.
The CAW, as I'm sure the CEP has done for years, they've had a great social mandate out there to work within the community, to help the community. Your job is most important, but it's also what goes on around you that's important as well.
Tu sais, on peut pas reculer, on peut pas, ça avance trop vite. Au moins, de garder ce qu'on a, de préserver ce qu'on a. Puis si on est capable d'aller chercher davantage, parce que au niveau des avantages, quand un travailleur ou une travailleuse a des avantages, ben toute la société en bénéficie automatiquement.
This mill is my family. I love the mill. We came here like 1967. My dad is a millwright. My dad worked here many years. I'm here. I've lived in the town site, so the mill itself is in my heart.
Unions in particular small communities are super important. It's all interconnected here. You know, if something happens to this mill, the car dealerships suffer, the restaurants suffer, everybody suffers. It's all a chain event here, so it's really important that we remain involved with the community and to have their support. Our union local, 1119, help the company stay on top of things and stay afloat We do see the success of our efforts today. It's really good times right now, I would say.
Tout le monde cherche toujours à s'évader. Tout est bien plus beau ailleurs. Trouver quelque chose de mieux. Modèle, ouvre grand tes beaux yeux bruns. Sans le rythme dans ton cœur. Le moment est opportun.
I really am excited the fact that the two unions are joining together.
Alors, le nouveau syndicat, on sait le nom aujourd'hui, là, Unifor, pour s'unir, pour être plus fort dans le fond, pour essayer de contrer les multinationales de ce monde aujourd'hui.
It should be different. It's not the CAW's constitution we're getting one that is voted in from both sides. So it's a different union. It's a new union. It is not the CAW or the CEP. It will be something new together.
You know, taking the good from CAW and taking the good from CEP and merging it into one, so it's one great union.
Just happy that, you know, there's more numbers. I'm all about strength in numbers.
Et le fait que Unifor pourrait devenir plus large au niveau de la société, je crois que ça serait quelque chose de vraiment bien.
We're facing a big world out there, and there are a lot of different roadblocks that are ahead of us, but we have our union that's going to stay and keep us all strong together.
Oui, on a des attentes. On a des attentes dans le sens où on pense qu'on va pouvoir passer à une nouvelle ère où ça va nous permettre de conserver au maximum nos emplois.
It's not just for unions, it's for working people. It's for people in the community. It's for people that work in temp, because I believe that people that work for temp agency, they really get the poor deal, because temp agency takes most of their money and they get less.
It's going to build a bigger group of people. It's a bigger bank of knowledge, and I think it's going to be good for definitely the workers, and I think for Canadians in general.
I would look at more connections with other locals in the area. Now that we've merged, we have a lot more locals that we have access to be able to do joint ventures with.
There's a role for Unifor to advocate on our behalf with the government.
It seems like now government is taking the corporate role on and is playing our major battles now is with government.
Le plus de monde qu'on est, le plus de pouvoir et le plus de force qu'on peut avoir pour faire changer les conditions ou des choses comme l'assurance à emploi.
Unifor, pour moi, c'est ce que c'est. Se rejoindre avec d'autres groupes, sociétés, et puis d'ensemble faire nos batailles, puis de devenir vainqueurs.
We must reach out at large to the community and Canada-wide.
Organizing has got to be its primary focus.
It's more now than ever because of all the exporting of jobs.
We'd like to see them very involved in pension to make sure the worker is looked after.
It's branching out across 20 sectors. People have never branched out to before, unemployed, self-employed.
Ouais, c'est une bonne chose parce qu'il y a beaucoup de travailleurs qu'on laisse de côté, quoi. On les oublie et ils doivent se battre tout seuls pour avoir les gains. Je trouve ça pas juste.
The whole right-wing agenda has sort of taken roots in the Canadian social, political fabric. We have to relaunch our struggle again to gain back what we have lost.
We're in the middle of the downtown east side, one of Canada's poorest neighborhoods. I've always found it interesting that where our union office is, if you go 4 blocks to the west, some of the most expensive apartments in Canada, $8 million, $10 million even, on the waterfront. If I come 4 blocks to the east, I'm in the middle of one of the poorest neighborhoods in Canada. Right from the beginning, the loggers who were injured, right through to today, the precarious workers who only work a little bit and then lose their jobs, end up on the street, end up homeless. The system produces that. Our union, I hope, will be willing to take a look at that and commit itself to changing that system to make sure that places like the downtown east side no longer exist.
really need to kick our young workers program into high gear so we have the leadership for the future.
Le printemps érable a été... en fait, ça l'a inspiré plusieurs jeunes, puis ça a fait comprendre aux jeunes aussi que tu peux faire changer les choses.
Les jeunes sont beaucoup plus conscients du travail famille à cette heure qu'on l'était dans le temps. Ils sont moins enclins à donner du temps à l'usine et à couper du temps à la maison. Fait que pour faire ça, il faut qu'on soit ensemble, qu'on soit solidaire. Ça prend un syndicat en bout de ligne.
Je pense que la base est tellement importante pour redonner un souffle à nos jeunes, de dire que c'est dynamique et que c'est capable de revendiquer, parce que c'est un droit qu'on a au Canada puis au Québec en particulier, d'être capable de dire ce qu'on pense.
I notice in my peer group, there isn't a lot of knowledge. Not too many people are involved or educated. They don't really know what's going on. So I think the new union is an opportunity to kind of spread the word and make it more public.
The fact that they're kind of going to be a union for all and going for people who aren't unionized, I think is a really great idea.
It's going to put the communities back on our side, I think, when they see that we're out there and we're reaching out to everyone.
Ce qui m'emballait aussi plus particulièrement, c'était les chapitres communautaires. En fait, que le syndicat va aussi s'impliquer dans la communauté.
We want our new union to be a voice on all these social issues and actually get out of that traditional mode of thinking about trade unions. And I think that is the first step of building some bridges with the broader community.
The power that we will have, not only within our own little local, but across Canada, will be incredible.
It's a very unique name. It's Unifor, so that means it's for everyone.
It suggests such a great partnership, brotherhood, or sisterhood in terms.
Unifor, tu sais, pour s'unir, pour être plus fort dans le fond.
We are for the people.
Unifor pour l'avenir.
Gotta get up, listen to me, clap your hands, stomp your feet, y'a rien qui va pas, quand tu bouges sur le beat, clap your hands, stomp your feet, stomp your feet.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that warm reception. The film reflects the diversity of our union, the sectors we are privileged to represent, but it also reflects the expectations of our rank and file members. And while we're deliberating with each other in the next couple days, think about the wonderful privilege we have of serving 300,000 members that might be watching this convention today, that we all wish were part of the participation on a personal perspective. But over the next couple days, as you sit there and deliberate and challenge yourself to represent the best interest of our members, think about the 300,000 members who we're privileged to represent. Think about what those folks said to us through that video. They said to us, we're more than a union. We're about community. We're about building a nation. We're about providing for others when others need a hand up versus a setback. So this is going to be an incredible couple days. A new day was put together by CEP members, Director Mike Connolly, and his crew, Greg Bennett, Alec Lisman, and Tim Kirkwood, who are all here today. Thanks for your work, and they're standing up as we recognize it. Thank you very much for your work. You can tell by its response that it was appreciated, and we thank you.
And we thank you for being a unionized journalist. Our anticipation when we're done, that anybody in the filmmaking business, any of the journalists out there, even some of those anti-union reporters for the media today should join a union. Because when the boss says they're obsolete, even when they're non-union, they're obsolete. So I would suggest to those that are out there that have attacked the labor movement, the best way to win justice is to join the labor movement and win the security of a collective agreement. So once again, I just wanted to send that message. You'll see another short video tomorrow morning. All combined, the video features 80 CAW and CEP members from across the country. Over the course of the weekend, we'll be presenting a number of video greetings from our friends and allies within the Canadian and international labor movement and other progressive organizations. They will be interspersed throughout the agenda and then available online later. These greetings were collected to hear from as many friends as possible, but allowing Unifor delegates the time to debate and to discuss the content of our convention. And brothers and sisters, I want to say in advance, I want to thank the guests for taking the time to send us a message of solidarity, friendship, and camaraderie. Because as I said in my opening remarks, quite frankly, Unifor has a vision, but Unifor can't obviously maintain that optimism and win that vision without the solidarity and friendship of others, and we should never forget it. I want to also remind people that photographer and our friend from Local 112, member Nick Sherman, will be at the photo booth just outside the convention hall immediately before lunch and before we resume after lunch and adjournment. The photos can be downloaded later from the Unifor Flickr page, which Ken has no idea what a Unifor Flickr page is, but it's in my notes. We encourage you to have some fun with this disguise. So, and if anybody wants to educate me on Flickr, Picker, Wicker, whatever, feel free to do that. You will see, over the course of today, prior to the election, my colleague and friend and the president of CEP, Dave Coles, and I will co-chair this convention. And we both have designated time to do so. And I would thank everybody once again for your patience and understanding. I know, being a rank-and-file activist, that if I was sitting around a round table with my colleagues and friends, I'd be dying to talk to you. I'd be dying to tell you my story. But hold on to your story until after the convention, please. I also want to share with the delegates here today that the people that are at the podium here today are the combined national executive boards of CEP and CAW. I'm not going to personally identify all of them, but I do want to say to the delegates that your combined national executive board put their differences together, aside, and each and every one of them, at every opportunity they had to address the interest of their combined membership, put their individual needs aside and answered a simple question over the last couple of years: how do we best serve our combined membership? How could we regain the strength of the labor movement in our country? How can we build confidence in our members that if we fight, we win, and if we don't fight, we lose? This combined national executive board that are at the podium here today are owed our deepest gratitude, our deepest respect, our deepest appreciation for your unselfishness and your unwavering support for your combined membership in the last couple of years. Thank you, brothers and sisters. And it's not unusual in any union convention, and certainly not unusual at CEP and CEW, that we would open up our convention with an Aboriginal welcoming. And we've always appreciated Aboriginal people, the first people into our land. We've also always appreciated the exploitation of the Aboriginal people. We've always appreciated the fact that there's so many Aboriginal people living in despair in a country that is so rich. Just recently, we've seen Aboriginal people from one end of the country to the other, fighting for justice, fighting for social justice, fighting for employment, fighting for independence, fighting for their children to have basic schooling and basic health care. And many of us in this room, and many of us in the labor movement, and many of us in the social movement joined with those folks. We were out there defending Aboriginals' rights to economic and social justice, recognizing they were the first people in our land. And again, we have done a disservice to our Aboriginal people in many ways, because today I can't tell you that we have environmental sustainability moving forward. I can't tell you that our water is protected. I can't tell you our air is protected, because we have a government that would sell off our natural resources in the interest of multinational corporations and foreign investments. So I want to say right off the bat to the Aboriginal communities throughout this country, continue the fight. The labor movement is in defense of economic and social justice. We're in defense of equality. We're in defense of kids being able to go to school in a public education system decided by the Aboriginal people in some circumstances, but provided for by government. Healthcare. It's amazing to me in some communities. Young people are dying. Young people are committing suicide. The facts of the matter is that Aboriginal people on a per capita basis are vulnerable to suicide more than any other class of citizens in this country. And we should think about that constantly as we build a nation. So I'm proud to announce here today that Gary Salt, pronounced as Sue, from the New Credit Nation of Mississauga is going to open up our convention. Gary is the co-chair of the New Credit First Nations Cultural Committee and marvelous storyteller. Many people in this room are marvelous storytellers. He leads traditional Aboriginal blessings with smudging and drumming. He is a pipe carrier and speaks about the history of the natives who lived in the area. He resides on the New Credit First Nations with his wife of 40 years and enjoys spending quality time with his children. Now, I know for a fact, being a trade union leader, that I should recognize his wife, as we should all recognize our spouses, for putting up with the work and activism that we do day in and day out, because they do make certain sacrifices. So to Gary's wife, through you, I thank her for her contribution to economic and social justice. Gary leads a wide variety of ceremonies and presentations with great respect, conviction, and passion. We got so much in common, isn't it? Quite frankly, I want to say that again. Respect, conviction, passion. That's the constitution of the labor movement, brothers and sisters. We're going to look at 90 pages, but those are the three words: respect, conviction, passion. And guess what? When we closed down Toronto yesterday, we had respect, conviction, passion in the interest of Canada. Thank you for yesterday. We are privileged that Gary will conduct this ceremony and welcome us to the traditional territory of the Mississauga, the New Credit. Sisters and brother, welcome Gary Sue. Gary.
Bonjour. Sounds like a French word, but it's Ojibwe. That's why we got to go along with the French people. Part of my bio that's inside of there isn't that when I first came out of the United States Navy, I worked in, I don't know, any kind of position I could get, I guess, just to make a living. And they didn't recognize my training that I had inside there. But eventually, what ended up happening, I went to work for Manitoba Hydro, for the IBEW, became a skilled tradesman. And even though when I moved back here to Ontario, I couldn't take my traveler, so I went into another union. And I took both of my sons into those unions with me, because now they're very successful people. They're so successful that on our reserve that the CAW came in to take his kids away because they thought he was a drug dealer. So the union has done that for my whole family. We've built a place to call home, and we've built a place where people respect us because just of the type of society that we like to bring out to the people. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to light a smudge, because tobacco has been given to me. And we do this so that tobacco is very sacred, not the kind that you're smoking there, but the kind that we smoke is like a, it's a traditional tobacco. So this song is a song about this fire. It's a fire of unity. The reason that we burn tobacco is so that we bring everybody's minds together. It brings everybody's minds together, and so this song talks about that. It says, Ambe, come, and you certainly come. Majanda, we're going over there. Jibwa Nibanda, before we go to sleep, because a lot of us are sleeping out there. We don't have that spirit that we need in order to combat our the things that are happening to us in the workplace, the things that they're taking away from us, the unity that is going to come here, because this fire has brought all of our minds together. So before we go to sleep, Jibwa Nibanda Abindagay. So the fire has been lit, that unity, and I'll sing it for you. The last part is the doorway of understanding is open. Ambe Majanda Jibwani Banda Abindagego Anakwagingaba Abindagego Anakwagingaba Ambe Majanda Jibwani Banda Abindagego Anakwagingaba Abindagego Anakwagingaba Ambe Majanda Jibwani Banda Abindagego Anakwagingaba Abindagego Anakwagingaba Ambe Majanda Jibwani Banda Abindagego Anakwagingaba Abindagego Anakwagingaba. I give every day we feed our bodies with the food that's been placed on our Mother the Earth, and every day we feed our minds with what we hear and what we see. But when I sing this song and I burn this smudge, then I feed our spirit. So let that spirit be strong. Let its voice be heard throughout not only our land, but all of the lands that stretch around this great world that we call our home. And let's make it a better place for all of us. Miigwech.
Hold on, I'm going to give you a quick gift. Very, very moving. Thank you very much.
So, Gary, on behalf of the delegates that are privileged to be in attendance today, and 300,000 workers from 20 major sectors of the economy throughout Canada, we'd like to thank you for your welcoming remarks. Please know that our new union, Unifor Canada, is fully committed to working in solidarity with First Nations to resolve the many problems and challenges facing your people. As a token of our appreciation, please accept this gift. We are also presenting you with a donation to the Indigenous Education Coalition, a donation of $2,500 from all of us. And again, it's a very small token, considering the incredible sacrifices that the Native people have obviously went through in this country. But it's an opportunity, yes, for simply to say thank you and acknowledge your people. Thank you very much.
Miigwech to all of you. The place that it'll go to help educate our First Nations people in 12 communities. So some of them are Panora, and I'm really thankful that you've given this gift so that our children will have a brighter future. Miigwech.
Okay, stay here. Stay here. Stay here because we want to put you on Twitter or Pitter, yes, sometime today.
We sound like we're birds.
No, we're going to be tweeting or pitting or something. I do think, extending a hand of solidarity to the Assembly of First Nations for the incredible activism that we've seen in the last year. Brothers and sisters, we've seen a movement through the I Don't Know More movement where frustrations leads to anxieties and anxieties leads to fighting back. And the I Don't Know More inspired so many of us through Canada, not inspired us, actually got us off our chairs of union activity to participate with the I Don't Know More and their incredible injustices that they raise publicly, and so got support of Canadian people from one end of the country to the other. I also would be not doing my job if I didn't thank those in the Occupy movement that also raised the consciousness of economic and social justice, the lack of opportunity versus opportunity. Young people out there, old people out there defending the kind of nation that the labor movement fights for every day. These are our friends, folks. These are those that want to build a nation in support of equality, in support of opportunity, raising expectations. And again, I just want to raise them because in many ways they were a complement to the labor movement's work in fighting for economic and social justice, and more than a compliment, in some circumstances they led, which is exactly what we should do in defense of one another. I want to raise and thank those folks. It is obviously my pleasure to declare the founding convention open. Once again, I want to welcome the delegates. It's a fascinating convention, as it was with CEP and CAW, but it's more significant today. We have come from all across Canada, which our past brought you, but never to these numbers. These numbers are significant. This is the largest convention ever that's been put together, and obviously it represents our new union, from Vancouver Island to Newfoundland. We're all here today to make history, and we will. And I want to say to the brothers and sisters, because I know you share this, you're going to hear me say this more often than not, we would prefer all 300,000 members in this room. We would prefer an opportunity to have that camaraderie and friendship. But for us to reach the 300,000 members we are privileged to represent, that is your responsibility when you go back to the workplace, to mobilize, to build confidence, to build an understanding of the work that we do every day. The 3,000 delegates here today are speaking for 300,000 members that need our leadership, but we need their activism. We need their support. We need their appreciation of the combined work that we have to do. So when we're out there talking to our 300,000 members, do it with great pride, do it with great respect, understanding that every single day they go to work and all they want is simple economic and social justice in a Canada that we call Canada. I also want to thank Marie-Jo Clement for the music to start the program today and for their ongoing important work. Thank you to the many working people, as I said, in CEP and CAW who has given so much effort and taken so much care to bring us to make sure we are ready. And we are ready. And that doesn't give service, brothers and sisters, when you have 3,000 delegates, another 600 or 700 guests, and you have administration work from hotel rooms to convention space, to making sure that everybody is comfortable in getting their kits, and everybody's registered, and our guests are treated with the tremendous amount of respect that they deserve from all parts of the world. It's our support staff from both unions that are working incredibly hard. In fact, when yous walk out here, maybe we could sing a tune. Hey, hey, ho, ho, we appreciate our support staff who helps us grow too. Hey, not bad. Hey. We have two founding unions coming together to form Unifor. The officers of the CAW and CEP have done a remarkable job leading this whole process. From our first informal meetings, to the proposal committee, to our conventions last year, to the working groups, leading us here today. So it is appropriate that we hear some opening remarks from the three national officers of each union. Before I do that and introduce the officers that are going to say a few words on behalf of their constituents and our combined membership, I would ask the Secretary-Treasurer of the CAW to provide warm greetings to the guests that are here today, to the guests that are not invited here today because they're friends in isolation. They're trade union activists. They're social activists. They're political activists. We fight for common objectives of winning for not only our membership, but for their but our combined constituency is about building a nation that gives the next generation opportunities and preserves the incredible wealth and strengths gained by the last generation. Peter Kennedy, will you introduce our incredible guests to the delegates?
Thank you, Ken, and good morning, sisters and brothers. This is absolutely incredible. There are in any convention a number of logistics that have to be dealt with. And this morning, we had to deal with one that results from our incredible journey that we're on and the incredible interest that our friends, allies, and the broader community have in what we are doing here this morning. Gaetan and I were just talking, and we recall that initially we had this room set for 3,250 delegates, international guests, special guests, and observers. We have more than 4,000 people here today. And I, like Ken, don't know a lot about Flickr, but coming out of our last CAW convention last year, I learned about live streaming. And I learned that while we had 1,000, 1,500 delegates in the room during the convention, that there was 4 times that many people watching the proceedings on live streaming. So, sisters and brothers, we have 16,000 people this morning participating in some fashion or another in this founding convention of Unifor. And we are all together as one. That, sisters and brothers, is evidence of the kind of interest and support there is in all quarters in the trade union movement, domestically, the trade union movement internationally, social action groups, community groups, our friends, a multitude of ordinary Canadian folks who share the values of the trade union movement, and they are with us. And I want to introduce this morning some of those that we have invited along with our international guests. And it is a lengthy list, sisters and brothers, but they all deserve to be recognized. But I'd ask that you hold your applause until the very end and recognize them as a group. From the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, National President, our good friend Andrew Detmer. From CNM CUT, the National Confederation of Metal Workers in Brazil, the General Secretary, Heo Queires. Council Member at Large, Manuela Cristina Dalvansavar Silva. Director of the Women's Secretariat, Marli Melo do Nascimento. From the Authentic Labor Front, Patricia Juan Pineda. From Industry Energy, Norwegian Oil, Kettle Carlson. From Industrial Global Union, Brian Kohler. From Industrial Global Union, the General Secretary, and another good friend, Jyrki Reina. Not here this morning, but arriving this afternoon, the Assistant General Secretary of the International Transport Workers Federation, Stuart Howard. From IUF, Global Sugar Coordinator, Jorge Cholan. From the National Union of Paper Workers of Brazil, Indigues Ferraro Martin. From the Electrical Workers Union of Mexico, the General Secretary, Martin Esparza. From the Electrical Union of Mexico, Humberto Montes Doca. From the Mexican Telephone Workers Union, Maria Carmen Lamas. And again, from Uni Americas, arriving this afternoon, Adriana Rosenvazve. From 3F, the United Federation of Danish Workers, Federation Secretary Per Christensen. From 3F, the National Advisors Center for Research and Development, Anthony Sylvester. For the Colombian Oil Workers Union, USO, Secretary for External Affairs, Cesar Loza. And from the Utility Workers Union of America, Mark Brooks. Those sisters and brothers are the international guests. I would like to read now through the domestic and North American guests. From ACTRA, the National Alliance of the Canadian Cinema, Television and Radio Artists, Jacob Leibovich. From the ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union, Mark Mahar. From the Broadbent Institute, I don't know that Ed Broadbent is here. He is here. Welcome, Ed. From the Canadian Association of University Teachers, James Turk. One of our heroes from CAW, Bob and Marilyn White. We have a number of former officers and their spouses, former Secretary-Treasurers, Jim and Gail O'Neill, Bob and Barb Nickerson, past Quebec directors, Luc Denoyer, Jean-Pierre Fortin and Linda Fauché, and also from the TCA, Robert Dean. We have a number of retired staff who have played a key role in our organization throughout the years. There's three in particular that I want to recognize because they have played a very important role in the whole proposal committee process. And that is Brother Bob Chernicki, Sister Susan Pratt, and Brother David Robertson. We have a number of leaders of organizations that have joined with CAW over the years. Tom Collins, Jim and Flo Hunter, Dick Berry, Ken Brown, Stan Horodiski. We also have with us, along with other guests from the New Democratic Party of Canada, a sister from CAW, Peggy Nash. We have from the CAW Public Review Board, Ellen Borovoy. And we have a number of former officers and key players in the life of CEP, Reg Baskin, Patricia Blackstaff, Bob Huguet, Gord Hunter, Clement Leroux, Serge Lord, Cease Makowski, Brian Payne, Fred Pomeroy, Rene Roy, Elmo Whittam, all from CEP. We have from the CLC, the President Ken Giorgetti, Executive Vice President Barb Byers, Executive Vice President Marie Clark Walker, and Secretary Treasurer Hassan Youssef. We have with us the President of COPE Local 378, David Black, the National President of CUPE, Paul Moist. We have Charles Fleury, the Secretary Treasurer of CUPE. We have from the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers, Joe Mulhall. We have from Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Denis Lemelin. We have from the Council of Canadians, Gary Neal. We have from Green Shield Canada, Steve Brady, and Green Shield will be co-hosting the event tonight. We have from the Fraternité Interprovinciale des Ouvriers en Électricité, Claude Leclerc. From FTQ Construction, Yves Oulette. From the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Dave Ritchie, General Vice President. From the Alberta Federation of Labour, Gil McGowan. From the BC Federation of Labour, Jim Sinclair. From the Manitoba Federation of Labour, Kevin Reback. From the New Brunswick Federation of Labour, Michelle Boudreau. From the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour, Rick Clark. From the Ontario Federation of Labour, Sid Ryan. All of those were presidents, or are presidents of their organizations. But in addition, from the Ontario Federation of Labour, we have Secretary Treasurer Nancy Hutchison and Executive Vice President Erwin Nanda. From the QFL, we have the President Michel Arsenault. From the National Union of Mine, Metal, Steel, and Allied Workers of Mexico, Napoleon Gomez. From the NDP, Members of Parliament Malcolm Allen, Alexandra Bulleris, Dave Christofferson, Joe Comartin, Libby Davis, Brian Massey, Robert Fox. From the Public Service Alliance of Canada, Robin Benson. From the Polaris Institute, Tony Clark. From the Telecommunication Workers Union, Michael Thompson. From Toronto and York Region Labour Council, John Cartwright. From the United Steelworkers, Ken Newman, and our good friend Bromley Armstrong. All of them here today, and all of them thank you on behalf of the delegates for coming and showing your support for what it is we do. Thank you very, very much.
Again, I want to welcome the guests, and thank you for your activism. Now, we might have missed a few people, which wouldn't be unusual when you have such a wonderful guest list. I know right off the bat, unless I wasn't paying attention, I didn't listen to Freddie Hahn, and him and I have marched together on so many demonstrations in the last couple of years. Actually, there's a rumor we're dating, and that's not bad. That's not bad. But I want to welcome you, Fred, and again, if there's any guest that we missed, it's just simply an oversight and not a lack of respect. And if there's anybody that we did miss, I fully would ask you to come up to the podium, talk to me in the next little while, for I can recognize you on behalf of the labor movement more appropriately. So thank you very much. I'm a little bit intimidated now because of the live streaming. So, Diplomacy in action. Without any further ado, the 6 leaders of both unions that were given the privilege to represent our members as presidents, secretary, treasurers, Quebec directors, and it is a privilege, brothers and sisters, to represent those members that obviously need leadership, but want us to defend their interest every single day. And as I said about the National Executive Board, our first speaker is Sylvain Martin. He was the CAW Quebec director. And during the discussions with the new union, the ideas of the new union, he was the first one to say, "Can I understand numbers? I even understand politics from time to time. And I would love to stay as the director of the Quebec division of the Canadian Union." But the reality is, he understood he needed to go hand in hand in solidarity with Michel Ouimet. And why I raise that is because the unique thing about some provinces in this country, CEP and CAW in Quebec always had a good working relationship. Under the past leadership and the present leadership, if we could work together in solidarity of one another outside of combining our resources and activity, which we're doing today, we did that in Quebec. So without any further ado, the unselfish former Quebec leader from the CAW, Sylvain Martin. And again, everybody knows this is a bilingual convention, and everybody must give each other the respect of their language, their culture, and listen to them with their interpretations. Put those interpreters on. I still got good eyes at a very young age, and I'm not going to have Gaetan get up until I see the English-speaking folks like Ken Lowenza put their headphones on. God, I wish I could speak French. No, God, I'm not pleading to God at this particular time. Can the labor movement teach me to speak French? It taught me to do everything else in my life. Okay, looks like we're all set. Now the next thing we always do in CAW. I live you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for this very generous introduction. It's appreciated. I can tell you that it's quite a privilege for me to speak to you this morning. It's a privilege to belong to those who are making a historic act, that is create a new union, Unifor. I remember in February 2012 at Quebec CAW, it was the very first time where we met our leadership to talk about the possibility of creating a new union with the CEP. At that time, we had a meeting of all local presidents in our own structure. We regularly meet local presidents, but that meeting was quite special. At the time, Jean-Pierre was Quebec director. I was his assistant with Denis Lepage, who was a local director in the Saguenay region, and Marcel, who was president of the Quebec section. So we met with all presidents. We presented the project, and everyone there at that meeting spoke about what they thought about this. It was a solemn event in certain ways, because all local presidents at that meeting went to the mic and spoke about their vision. Everyone was listening very carefully what everyone had to say. No one said, "It's not a good thing." The worries expressed was, what's going to happen to my members? What will it give to my members? And a local president said something then that my Quebec gang know very well, because I've been repeating it since then. A local president, he said, bigger is not necessarily better. If I'm closer to my member, it means better. So with the privilege that I had as a Quebec director to work on the Proposals Committee, to work on the Constitution Committee, I can tell you that everyone I worked with, the hundreds of people who worked on preparing reports, on preparing our Constitution, who worked on committees, all had that idea in mind. What can we do to build a better union? The thousands of people, because we're talking about thousands of people who were consulted over the length of this process, when they spoke, when they went at the mic, when they talked about the project, always kept in mind, what can we do to build a better union for our members? Today, this is a historical moment. We'll give birth to Unifor. As individual members, we'll sign our union card to become a member of Unifor. We'll vote in favor of policies and a constitution. We'll elect a new executive that embodies the membership we represent, that embodies Canada, Quebec, all of the regions, all of our activity sectors, women, men that we represent. Our executive will be mostly made out of rank-and-file members, and it will embody Unifor and our members. In the next weeks and months, we'll build Unifor's identity as members and individuals. And already, I think that we have the basis for this identity, because you see it here through the process, this journey over the past months. Unifor is not the result of a project by a few leaders, but all of its membership. That is how we were able to build our unions up until now, and that is what we'll do in the coming weeks and months. Unifor will build its identity through the 4 pillars of the union movement. We will service our members at the bargaining tables. We'll be a strong voice for the members we represent, so that they have dignity and respect in their workplaces. We'll also build the identity thanks to a good education service. By sharing our experience, by working together, we will be training the leaders of tomorrow. I had the privilege to work at the education department of the CAW in Quebec, and at the time I used to say to people when we ended a training session, I would tell them what we learned today, what we shared today, and together
On le partage, ça continue à vivre.
That is how we're going to educate in Unifor. We'll create identity with, thanks to organizing. All of the statistics show it. A high unionization rate improves the quality of life of all workers. As a consequence, this brings justice in our world. As a consequence, the interpreter is sorry, we've just lost sound. So again, the interpreter is sorry, we've just lost sound to the booth.
I don't know if they're...
No, translation is still off. We still don't have sound. Now we have sound.
People in the booth.
It's unfortunate you missed the best part. Unifor will also build its brand name by becoming the House of Workers. If we want our locals, as I call them, those who are out there, who have a sign where you read Unifor, they will be able to welcome workers all and tell them, welcome home. The workers will belong to Unifor by belonging to an accredited union, but also by belonging to a chapter. Wherever there is a worker who can see a sign, such a sign, Unifor, they will feel at home. The only condition to belong is to be a worker. All are welcome. And in closing, this morning, I raised it. I will have signed 2 cards in my life. When I was 17, I signed up with CAW Quebec, and today I'm 48 years old, and I'll be signing up with Unifor. When I was 17 and I signed my card as a CAW member, I sort of had an idea why I was signing this card, but over time, I realized that I had joined a very big family, and today, at 48, I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm signing this card. I'm looking to build a better world for workers. Thank you to all, and long live Unifor.
Thank you, Sylvain. Thank you, Sylvain. Maybe, again, your respect is incredible and appreciated, but maybe we'll just hold off on the applause until all 6 speakers are done, for we could get on with the important business of running the convention. I also want to acknowledge people that we did miss, and this is automatic, and I asked them, and I thank them for letting us know that. Wayne Marson, a member representing the New Democratic Party in Hamilton East. Brian Brown, the president of the University of Windsor and Faculty Association. Somewhere in the audience, Brian. Edmund Gallant, retired vice president of Quebec Division of CEP. And Heather Lee, vice president of COPE, Local 378. And without any further ado, the Quebec director out of CEP and the nominee for the Quebec director into the new union, Unifor, Michel Ouimet. Again, we'll need your translation, and I'll ask the translators to take a break after this speaker.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone. Sisters and brothers, welcome to this founding convention of our new union, Unifor. I'm touched and, in fact, honored to be able to speak to you today. It is truly a historic day. We will be participating in a very important event in the history of our land. I've been very much involved from the very beginning in this adventure of CEP, CAW. I've always believed in this project. We've done a great deal since our conventions were held, that is to say, when we adopted the final report of the Proposals Committee. All working groups were put into place in order to work on and to determine what Unifor would look like today. You know, it wasn't always easy. At times, our discussions were difficult, but at the end of the road, I think we've pulled it off. And we've pulled it off because we're all trade unionists. We're all involved. We're all dedicated. We're all working towards the same goal. At every step of the way, we consulted each other. Consulted our members at CEP, consulted our members at CAW. Some were concerned, but no matter, we managed to pull it off and build a new union. Unifor will be the biggest private sector union in Quebec and in Canada. And as I've said time and again, and I know Sylvain has said this, it's not enough to be bigger, you have to be better. And so we need to be better. Our 2 unions are well known in terms of service to the membership. We're not afraid to be out there to fight for our membership. To be better, we need to provide even better service to the membership, because that is at the very heart of what it is we do. Provide service to the membership, defend the membership, and we mustn't lose this from sight. And to do so, Unifor will have a defense fund of $147 million. So if an employer wants to attack us, better think about it twice. Sylvain also mentioned this. We have very important resources to organize over the next 5 years. We want to catch the wave, and I truly hope that other unions will want to join us. Our vision, that is to be an inclusive union through chapters, community chapters, will make of Unifor a very different kind of union. I'm very proud of Unifor, and that it wishes to recognize the national character, distinct character of Quebec society. We in Quebec will need to take advantage of this special status to do even better, to provide service, because you know there is competition. Let's be upfront about it. There are rival union organizations who will not be afraid to raid us. So we will need to provide special services, be it legal services, organizing services, retirement services, communication services. We need to be proactive wherever we may be. We have to be out there in the media. That is how we will reach the membership. That is how we will be able to speak to our achievements, and in so doing, draw in more people. Education services, they need to be diversified. We have to reach out to the greatest number. All of these services will allow us to fend off the competition. To provide service, that's all fine and well, but it's not enough. We have to do even more. We have to become political. We have our hands full with the Harper government, and we mustn't lie down. 377 on the financial statements of unions, C525 on the mandatory vote for certification, the RAND formula, the cuts to the credits, fiscal credits of the Solidarité, special laws when it comes to bargaining, and nowadays, Verizon. And we went out in the streets yesterday because of this. If people say that we don't take care of politics, politics will take care of us. So we have to get involved. We have to involve our membership. We have to make them understand the importance of getting involved in politics, because that will impact their working conditions. We have to make a difference. Unifor will make a difference. I am convinced of this, sisters and brothers. I am convinced that at the next elections we will make a difference, because we're going to do everything we possibly can to rid ourselves of this anti-union, anti-social, anti-worker government. But in order to do so, each and every one of us here today at convention, as well as our brothers and sisters back in the workplace, need to get involved, and they need to understand the urgency of the matter. We have to fight for a society that brings us together and that is to our image. We have a great task. We have to reach out to each and every one of our 300,000 members. We have to talk to each and every one of them. Together, we have to be involved. That is the only way for us to fight for our rights, improve our workplaces, and build a better society. A society that is just, and with each victory, we will build Unifor. Long live Unifor. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce a couple others. The former president of FFAW brought FFAW members into the CAW, Richard Cashin. He's here today, Richard Cashin. And we also have a member of parliament from York Southwestern, former CEP National Staff Representative, Mike Sullivan. And I know your trade union activism will go to the table. Thank you, Mike. The next speaker is Gaetan Menard, Secretary-Treasurer and unselfish individual in the last few months. Gaetan Menard. For something, go ahead. Hold it. Hold it.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, point of privilege.
Daniel Saint.
Daniel Saint-Pierre, Local 648. This morning, while looking at the documents on the table, I realized that one of these was in English only. Locals 1101 And as you can see, it's in English only. And so I do know there is a rule whereby anything that is handed out on convention floor needs to be in both official languages, English and French. Am I right, brother?
By the combined work of CAP and CAWs in both translations. So what's in translation in English today didn't get the authority of the officers of the union. So I'll take a look at it right after today's meeting.
D'accord, mais je veux juste dire...
That's fine, but I would like to say to my sisters and brothers from 1101 that my members and all the members of the locals here today will support these products produced by the Niagara Falls local. Thank you.
Yeah, that's, again, that is a group that got disenfranchised in Niagara Falls from CEP, and I do apologize for that because we did say drop that on the tables and we should have put it in both official languages, so I can't apologize enough. But again, if we were perfect, we wouldn't have to work so hard to beat down Harper. Gaetan Menard.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Toronto.
Well, you have no idea how proud I am to be here today. Holy jumping am I happy. You know, yesterday we did a great deal of work, and look at your kids. Look at the work that's been done in the past 15, 18 months. I'm proud of the process we put into place, whereby never in the history of Canada have we seen a process where two organizations decide to work together to create a new union and go about it in such a transparent fashion, in such an open fashion, where dialogue was present, whatever the meeting we had, wherever we were in the country. Peter and I met with thousands of workers from Halifax to Vancouver, from Thunder Bay to Quebec. We went everywhere. And what I saw in the eyes of these thousands of workers was hope. They hope that we will be able to build on our dream. Quite a few of us this week talked about Martin Luther King and the 50th anniversary of his I Have a Dream speech. And perhaps it's because I was born that very year. Perhaps that's why. I don't know. But my parents also told me and raised me to think that I was entitled to dream. I have the right to dream for a better world. I have the right to dream to abolish poverty. I have the right to dream for a world free of racism and discrimination. I have the right to dream for social justice. I have the right to dream for a world where we all have a chance. And indeed, that is my dream, and that is why I joined the labor movement. I felt that was the best way to fulfill my dream.
That if you want to realize your dream, there's not many ways to do that. You got to roll up your sleeve and work hard. And I got to tell you, this is what we're going to have to do to realize our dream and to make Unifor the wonderful organization that we want to make it. We're going to work hard to mobilize our members. We're going to work hard to politicize our members, as Michel has pointed out earlier. We're going to work hard to link with our neighbors, to make connections with our community, to make sure they understand what we are doing is in their own interest. We're going to work hard, brother and sister, to kick the ass of Harper and all of his friends that are trying to destroy the middle class in this country. Confrères, consoeurs,
sisters and brothers, today is not the end of a process. It's the beginning of the process, a truly extraordinary process. Together, united, we will be strong. We will be able to defend the interests of the workers of Canada. Unifor will allow us to have a better future. Together, we will build a better world. Together, we will fulfill our dream. Thank you.
Without any further ado, my good friend and colleague for the last 5 years, Secretary-Treasurer of the CAW, Peter Kennedy. Thank you, Ken, and again, good morning, sisters and brothers, friends, delegates, all. At the outset of this process, we issued a document entitled A Moment of Truth for Canadian Unions. It was a critical document, but it was a hopeful document, an idealistic document. It was a I don't know a lot about technicalities, but I know that we absolutely have to have transition. Where's our technical folks? Get at it. Okay. Are we okay now? Go ahead, Pete. Okay. This document set the stage for what we are embarking on. A journey that in elapsed time has been some 22 months, but in actual working time has really only been about 9 or 10 months because of the hiatus for our respective conventions of 2012. But I want to recognize Ken and Dave, because without their wisdom, without their foresight, without their intuitive knowledge that something had to be done, that the status quo wasn't good enough, we wouldn't be here today. And we are here today, filled with hope, idealism, and inspired by the pride that we all have in our respective organizations, here to build a better, not bigger, better union. Not just for our members, but for our communities. One of the prime objectives of Unifor, in my mind, will be about engagement. How our members engage with the union, how the union engages with our members, how our members engage in their communities, how their communities engage with our local unions, and through them with Unifor. We are building a union that has unparalleled inclusivity, not just internally again, with respect to constitutional commitments regarding equality and diversity, but externally as well, as we reach out to those communities through our community chapters and through our continued commitment to international solidarity. We all know of the unprecedented attack that has occurred over the last 30-plus years, not just on working people generally, but on the institution of the labor movement. And that attack happens for a reason. Because those that would want to destroy us understand something that we sometimes forget. And that is the best vehicle for working people anywhere is a good trade union labor movement. Unions are an underpinning of democracy. Look around the world. There is no country that has a thriving middle class that does not have a strong labor movement. And we have, in this country, a so-called democracy, where in fact our leader, our Prime Minister, has prorogued Parliament on 4 occasions. That, sisters and brothers, is not democracy. Going to the streets, as we did yesterday, In the Verizon demo, that's about democracy. It's about ordinary people having their voices heard, and Unifor will be a vehicle for that in the future. And I was struck yesterday when Ken talked about the free trade debate and how we resisted that 30-some-odd years ago. And I remembered that we in our organization took out full-page ads across the country that said, "Canada is not for sale." Well, sisters and brothers, it's worse than that now. And I'll use Brother Cole's terminology because we are live streaming. The turkeys want to give our country away. We in CAW have a mantra. Fighting back makes a difference. We know that if you fight back, you don't always win, but we also know that if you don't fight back, you never win. And that is true about solidarity. Without solidarity, sisters and brothers, we cannot win. Solidarity will give us a tool in which we can use to win. And today we come together and solidify the bands of solidarity that we have shared previously within our two organizations. To make it even stronger, to join together in organic internal solidarity, to become one, a united union, a force, strength, Unifor, sisters and brothers.
Another unselfish, progressive individual spent his lifetime on economic and social justice issues, fighting on behalf of working men and women, the President of CEP, Dave Coles.
Well, thank you, Ken. I am truly very, very humbled to be standing before so many great trade unionists and activists. It is a privilege, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this honor to have represented the CEP for the last 7 years and to have helped nurture with many others this great and glorious day, because this convention is really, really about you. This convention is about all workers across this country, especially those workers who work in precarious employment, who are abused by their employers, who fail to make a decent living because their bosses are jamming the profits of their corporations and their companies into their pockets and not into our families in a way that we can raise them with dignity. Many precarious workers work 2, 3, 4 jobs. Husband, wife, partner, children in the same house, just so they can put bread and butter on their table, and that is a shame. I want to talk to those who cannot be here today, that live in small town Canada and Quebec, in the rural communities, who have paid an extraordinary price through this economic meltdown. Many have lost not just their jobs, but they lost their pension plans, they've lost their homes, in some cases they've lost their communities as well. We need to remember that there is a big country out there where a lot of workers work that are in small places, small towns, and they have really felt the brunt of this economic crunch. And I want to speak specifically to telephone workers from coast to coast to coast. Verizon will not come to Canada. And I want to conclude my remarks by speaking directly to a clip in the video by the CEP member Gary Engler. And that's the brother, the comrade, that's riding his bicycle through Vancouver and down through the downtown east side. That happens to be a community where we came from. A number of us lived in the east end of Vancouver for many years, and you'll know that a lot of the people in that community are our brothers and sisters. There are family members, there are our fathers, there are our mothers, there are our sons and daughters that are casualties. They're casualties to this rotten system that we work under in Canada. And I think it is our responsibility in Unifor, it's our responsibility in Unifor to remember that if they come after one of us, they come after all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, friends, guests. Thank you for your determination. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for recognizing the status quo is not acceptable. Recognizing that the status quo requires more inclusiveness, more transparency, more unity, more solidarity. I'd like to obviously begin my address on behalf of my family, who has had their lives enhanced through this union called UAW-CAW. I said at our convention yesterday that I was a privileged young man. I started off at a minimum wage job, and then at the age of 18, I walked into a unionized workplace represented by a powerful local union in Local 444, led by a powerful leader in Charlie Brooks. And I walked into that workplace, and the steward greeted me at that time and said, "Young man, if you behave for 90 days, you'll have wonderful opportunities in your union." But it wasn't that comment that stuck with me. What stuck with me was my first paycheck, where I went from $1.65 an hour to $4.48 almost overnight. The $4.48 job at that particular time allowed me to provide for my young family, allowed me to contemplate whether I can buy a home, buy a car, and contemplate whether I would have the opportunity someday to send my kids to colleges and university with others that require that kind of support from their family. And that's what I remember the most in my life. And do you know what I was blessed with? I wasn't one of those workers, regrettably or not regrettably, that had to have the courage of signing a union card, the courage of being organized in my own workplace. The facts of the matter is the foundation of a wonderful organization was built before I got there. And the objectives of myself and my family ever since then is how do we continue to build on that foundation? How do we continue to work together to give all Canadians the same opportunity that I have had through this union? Brothers and sisters, Unifor is not just a union. It is a social movement. It's a progressive movement. And I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, We should have all been inspired in recent months with the Occupy movement. People that sense frustrations, sense anxieties, sense a lack of hope, and don't see a voice for rational, reasonable, political alternatives in this country. And they went to community and they sacrificed. And they made a statement. And the pundits out there, and even some of our members said, what are they trying to say? What's their message? Their message was dynamic, brothers and sisters, that 1% of our nation is doing incredibly well on behalf of 99% that are struggling every day. The 1% has it all. The 99% are fighting for economic and social justice and fairness. And we got to switch that balance of power, brothers and sisters, and the only way you do it is through the power of the union. And brothers and sisters, in the power of the union can't be done in isolation. We've done incredible work in the last 2 years. This is the conclusion of that work through the democratic process. But the real work in the last 2 years was putting a constitution together that got the confirmation of thousands of members that aren't here today when we went from community to community to community and asked them their opinion. Number one, we asked them, do you think we'd be stronger combining our efforts? And it was an overwhelming yes. Number two, we took it to our constitutional conventions, elected delegates, overwhelming yes. Number three, we went back to more communities, full transparency, full understanding, sharing all of the changes that were made in the consultation process, and the Constitution reflects that today. And obviously the policy papers we deal with today are going to guide us. But really what's going to guide us, brothers and sisters, is our heart, our desire, our commitment to one another, the recognition that we need partners. Yes, the labor unions are united. We are friends in friendship and solidarity, and we do a lot of good work together that doesn't get recognized in this nation. But we've got to work with the coalitions even more than we ever have. In the last little while, the Occupy movement lit a flame. The I Don't Know More lit a flame. The Unifor lights a flame. The multiple demonstrations, including the one we had recently in Niagara Falls to protect universal public health care, the vision of Tommy Douglas of 6 or 7 decades ago, where 3,000 people got together, not talking about our individual needs, but talking about the collective needs of our nation, which is universal public accessible health care. And brothers and sisters, you cannot have universal public accessible health care if you don't provide the respect and support for the workers that provide those services in our public sector day in and day out. So brothers and sisters, we have done an incredible job. Each and every one of you have done a good job for your union, your local union, in some cases your community and your country. We got to think bigger. We got to think outside the box, where you're a small local, a big local, a small community or a large community. What do we have all in common? We're fighting for justice. We're fighting for equality. We're fighting for fairness. And brothers and sisters, just recently, we've been working very closely with the coalition groups. We brought in our union, CEP supported it, to Port Elgin, 40 different coalition partners, from Aboriginals to Lead Now to Council of Canadians to so many others. And it wasn't a discussion led by the union. It was a collaborative approach where every idea was asked, where every suggestion was deliberated. And now we're trying to form an organization that we could bring all of our united forces together, dealing with issues of economic, social justice that affects us all. And again, I have been working with a new group called Making Waves. And they have done incredible work bringing them coalition partners together. And we've got to continue that support moving forward, because the labor movement, brothers and sisters, has never won in isolation. We won in the church halls. We won in the union halls. We won in our community events where we provide support to our neighbors, our friends and Canadians. What I like about this union, brothers and sisters, you gave me a middle-class job. Brothers and sisters, you gave me the opportunity that when I was sick and my family was sick, that my prescription drugs was covered through the collective bargaining power of my union. Brothers and sisters, you won for me the right to retire at a young age with a decent pension and decent benefits as I move forward. Brothers and sisters, we collectively, politically won the right to have a decent pension for those that can't and don't have the power through their union to bargain pensions. We got to continue to improve on our Canada Pension Program to make sure that no retiree that built this great country ever lives in poverty and lives in the insecurities of having to sell their home when they're retired. That is not Canada. Brothers and sisters, we have to continue to fight even harder. Fight even harder for those that are unemployed. Today, less than 30% of those that pay into EI collect EI. Brothers and sisters, that's an injustice. And brothers and sisters, today, our kids, our grandkids, our kids between the ages of 17 and 24 have an unemployment rate of 24%. That's the official rate. And brothers and sisters, that was not my generation. My generation, you could get a good manufacturing job almost anywhere. You could work with the public service. You could know and recognize you could move into a middle-class job as a result of the power of the union and the power of our political action in shaping the public policies of this country. So, brothers and sisters, as we recognize and move into a new union, we recognize that we are speaking for 300,000 members. 300,000 families. But in today's deliberation, we're talking about 30 million Canadians. Canadians that have the right to universal health care, the right to child care, the right to good public services, paying public sector workers good wages and benefits because they deserve it, and they add to the economy. Their spending dollars are incredibly important to our communities. And my last remarks is to the business community. It is time that you speak up in defense of good wages and good benefits and good pensions. Because there's no business that I know of can't survive long term without a healthy economy, without healthy communities, without people having some disposable income to spend in your communities, to spend in your businesses. We want real estate people to be successful. We want small business people to be successful. But if we all get pushed to the lowest denominator and we no longer have the ability to have a middle-class job where we have some disposable income, our nation will be hurt. Taxes would not be able to provide for our great public services that we have here today. As a nation led through the voices of people in this room, we collectively must come together for equality. We must collectively come together for decent wages and benefits. And we must come collectively together to say it's okay to pay taxes. Because I'd rather pay taxes than put my credit card in a hospital when I go in to be sick. I'd rather pay taxes than put my credit card down to put my kids through education. I'd rather pay taxes than pay tolls in the infrastructure in our nation. Taxes are not a bad thing. It's a good thing if it's a fair tax policy in Canada. So brothers and sisters, this is my union card. You take your union card out. Your best union, your best card in your wallet is your union card. And let's give every Canadian an opportunity to have a union card. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Twitter that. We did. Sisters and brothers, I want to just again remind people in the convention before we go to the agenda, which we're cutting. We've got a lot of work in a short time. Both unions have an anti-harassment policy. In fact, both unions go to our employers constantly and put anti-harassment policies in the collective agreement. Because if we left it up to the boss alone, there wouldn't be anti-harassment policies. There'd be discrimination constantly. There'd be racial discrimination. There'd be equality differences. So I just say to the people in this convention hall that obviously works for the trade union movement, and remind you that every person in this hall deserves respect. And if there's anybody that feels disrespected in any way, feel free to come up and see me in the podium, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure that we correct it. So the bottom line is, harassment is no joke. We do not tolerate sexism, racism, homophobia, or any other type of discrimination or harassment in our union. We cannot tolerate it if we are going to build the Unifor we are all dreaming to. So please respect the policies of respect that we have adopted in both of our conventions over the years. And once again, if you experience that situation, come and see me. And quite frankly, I hope nobody has to come and see me, because it'll be an embarrassment to the labor movement if one person has to come and see me and lodge a legitimate complaint on harassment at this time in our lives, in our career. I would ask for your total support in that particular area. I also want to raise with you again that the practices of both unions is to run on the Berno's Rules of Order, which was a practice of both unions, but I never could and never said that word until yesterday because the guys put it down for me, but I'll try to follow them. Usually we run our conventions a matter of fact and manner, but the rules are there and when we need to. And we have our own in-house experts to interpret those rules for us if we need to. I had to hire an expert because I don't go by respect. Respect, tolerance, understanding are the three words I tried to chair each time. That is Marvin Papusa. He'll be up here if we need him. For further discussion, we'll follow current practices and limit speeches to 5 minutes, and we will cut you off quickly if we have to, only to keep the business running, and that won't be disrespectful. If we start running out of time, we might have to shorten it, but we'll start with that 5-minute limit time. I'd like at this time, obviously, to introduce the election committee. So again, delegates, before this founding convention, with very specific functions to carry out, there is only a standing committee to affirm. Please refer to the names of the members nominated to be the election committee. Dan Cluche, National Representative. John Francois Primo, Trustee Support Coordinator and JCP Representative. Mike Kanjarowski, National Representative. Gilles LePage, Local 698. Deborah Montgomery, Local 4268. Allison Pye, Local 597. Steve Hunter, Local 222. Gary Taylor, Local 1498. Paul Reno, Local 444. Dave Skidmore, Local 444. Brad House, Local 1859. Darren Gibson, Local 144. Rob Harrison, Local 3000. Eric Day, FFAW, CAW. And Peter Kennedy moves the nomination of those candidates on the election committee, and it is seconded by Gaetan Menard. Is there any questions to the election committee? Would the election committee just stand up and be recognized? Election committee, stand up and be recognized. Where are you? Stand up, stand up. Thank you again. Thank you for your cooperation in helping us through this process. Now we have a demonstration of procedure. I can't believe this was part of my job, introducing technology. What'd I do, Pete? Until now, we have been voting in the traditional way by a show of hands. And where appropriate, we're going to continue to do that. However, our new Constitution requires that elections and some votes will be secret per capita votes. And do that efficiently, we have in place a secure electronic voting system. We are now going to have a short demonstration on how that works by Brother Jason Murphy. And I don't know what other affiliates do on their voting, but it might be interesting to watch this and learn from our experience. Go ahead, technical team. Oh, you're right behind me. Oh, I thought you were going to come from the sky or something.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Delegates,
Before we start, before we go into the details of the procedures that we're going to be looking at, I want to specify that we only have 2,400 voting devices which are spread out across this room. We have probably over 1,600 delegates in the room. Those voting devices are really meant for delegates to use, so I would ask that you make sure that as a delegate seated at your table, you have a voting device. If you do not have a voting device, there may be voting devices on other tables around you that are not being used by that particular table. So the process will be such that we will go through the PowerPoint presentation that we have to show you, which will basically go through the voting procedure. At the end of that, we're going to be testing the voting devices using 3 dummy questions that we made up for you to test the devices. Then, anybody who has a problem with their voting device will have an opportunity for the voting device to be replaced before we go to the important questions and the real motions that will be put on the floor. So if you have some voting devices you don't need, we can have them spread out across the room. Make sure everybody gets their voting devices. We have some at the front tables. I see some brothers with and sisters with some devices in their hands, so everybody gets a voting device. So we're going to start this, and again, we're going to do 3 dummy questions for this session, brothers and sisters. We're going to carry on with the business of the convention, and then when we are prepared to take a real vote, we're going to have one final dummy question that we're going to go through so that everybody has a bit of time to make sure that all the issues are fixed before we get to the real questions. Does every delegate have a voting device in their hands? We're just about to proceed, brothers and sisters. Everybody has a voting device in their hands. You will need this very nice card, and no, it is not a union credit card. This is a voting card, brothers and sisters. So you will need 2 things. You will need your card, which has your name on it, and you will need your voting device. And I will ask the fellows from Tel Aviv to show the PowerPoint presentation so we can go through the actual procedures. And I'm going to do some of my speech in French, so you guys get your translation devices ready.
So first thing first, I still see people are offering extra voting devices. So if any of the delegates don't have a voting device, try and get one. So first thing, you need to make sure that you have your SIM card and also the device. Then you must insert your card in the device, and the name should be facing you. You shouldn't be seeing the Unifor logo. You should see your name. And the chip is at the bottom of the card. So you insert that part of the card in the machine in this way. Chip first. Push it to the bottom. It's very important, otherwise you won't get the connection. Then everyone should see a welcome message on their device. You should see welcome and your name, that is the delegate's name. At this time, you might have a defective device. If that is the case, all those who do not see the welcome message, please stand up, and we'll ask the Tel Aviv people to come and see you to either replace the device or resolve the issue.
The welcome message on their screen. I invite you to stand up, and we'll have the folks from Tel Aviv go across the room and fix your problems. Again, so that we don't hold up the business of the convention, we're going to carry on with the voting procedure. We're going to do 3 dummy questions. Unfortunately, if you're standing up, and Tel Aviv people have not had an opportunity to fix your problem. You will not get a chance to vote on those three dummy questions, but we will run a fourth question for you to test your device and make sure you're comfortable with the device before we move on to the official votes. So everybody's okay. I don't see a whole lot standing up. Those that are seem to be walking towards the doors. So again, anybody who has a problem with the device, stand up and perhaps shake your hand so the Tel Aviv crew know that you're not just going to the bathroom. Perfect. So the next step is that we're going to be prompted for the language. The default language is English. So if you want the screens to display English instructions, at this stage you do not have to make any selections. Pour nos délégués francophones,
for the Francophone delegates, the default language on the device is English. So if you want to change and get French instructions, you need to press on 1 and then confirm your selection by pushing the biggest button, that is the blue button in the center. So automatically you should then see instructions appear in French. I've just done that on mine and it says French. Well, that's français, believe it or not. So at this point, we've all selected our language. There are many other languages, but I suppose that you'll be using either French or in English. If you're German, you might be able to use it, but I don't know what that number is. So the next step is voting. So when we'll open a question for the vote, normally there are only two options. You'll see the options. We'll show the questions on the screens, and then you'll either have to choose between 1 or 2. We're talking about the numbers on your machine. The voting will be opened for a certain period of time. The person chairing the convention will open voting and decide when the vote is closed. Normally, it's 10-15 seconds, so don't leave the room. So when the chair closes the voting period, then the results are done, and if you haven't voted, you lose your vote. So when you vote, say you were to select 1 while the voting is open, and then you want to change your vote. Before voting closes, you can then press on C, which is cancel, to cancel your first choice and then reselect. If you do not do that, if you were to push 1 and then you panic and then you press 2 because you really want to press on 2, you've just selected 12. And that's not one of the choices. So you will get a message saying that your selection was invalid. So if you want to change your choice, you need first to press on cancel before you select again. So shall we proceed with our first dummy question? You'll see them appear on the screen so that we can test our devices. So I'll ask Tel Aviv to screen the first question, both in French and in English. There you are.
Late for work. As often as I can would be option number 1. Option number 2 would be I'm never late. I adjust my watch accordingly. So brothers and sisters, at this point I will open this question and this vote right now. The vote is open. You've got 15 seconds to make your selection. So if you made a valid selection, you will see that the selection you've picked is there on the screen and it says valid. At this point, I will close the vote. So you see the screen says vote is now closed. The results will be available for the chair first, and the chair decides when the results are revealed to the delegation. And since I'm not a political figure, let's reveal the results.
Hey, there they are right there.
Reveal them to the crowd. There you go. So I'm also in that 70%. I'm part of the majority. I like that. So we're going to run a second question, sisters and brothers, so we're all comfortable with the device again.
Maybe you should explain the first number. Do you have the
Yeah, je vais le faire à la prochaine. So Gaëtan suggested I explain to you the numbers when we get to the next question. I'll do that right now. Laquelle des deux a les plus belles?
What has a better looking leg? A seagull or a chicken? And right off the bat, we apologize for these very difficult questions early this morning. So I open the vote. You can now vote. How about Ken or I?
Closing the vote. Reveal the results, please. Leave them on the screen so I can quickly explain to our delegates. So it looks like the chicken is the choice of the majority. So you see we have 65 of our strength, the total voting strength of our delegates that have chosen a chicken, and 34% a seagull.
Okay, what's the total number of votes?
Total number of votes, if you were to add up the two, so we've got 85,907 and we've got 165,867. So I'm an accountant, but I have a calculator back at the office.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. I'll say like Peter. All right, so that's the second question. We have a third question. Please bring up the third question. Now I'm looking forward to this answer. What is the proper English translation for the song La Danse des Canards? Is it the duck song or is it the chicken song? I will open this important question for the vote. You've got 10 seconds. The vote is now closed. Well, that's interesting. Reveal the results. I was told by some others that it was the chicken song. I couldn't figure out how a chicken does coin, 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 but nevertheless. So, brothers and sisters, those are the three dummy questions that we have for you at this moment. So we are going to continue and carry on with the business of the convention. And when we're ready for a real vote, we're going to run one dummy question again to you, which will not be that funny. It'll be just a made-up motion, like we usually see them on our convention floors. And then we're going to move on to the serious questions. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Jason. Point on mic 4. Go ahead, brother.
Good day, Chair. Tyson Siddle, Local 44. Point of clarity, when the votes come up, it doesn't display in the results any spoiled ballots or members who did not vote. Every time it shows a percentage that equals 100%, and we spoiled our ballots on purpose just to see if it would show up. That has to be contained in that results. Thank you.
My technical guys say they'll work on it, but we don't need any spoiled ballots. It's about as simplistic it can get, but we will fix that because our tech guys say they can. If you asked me to do it, I wouldn't have a clue. Okay, I think this is a significant time for this combined membership to come together and send our 300,000 members a message that we're united in building a new union. So at this particular time, you're going to have the signing of the membership cards and the adoption of the Constitution. Sisters and brothers, at this time we're ready to found Unifor. The first step in founding our new union is to create a Unifor membership. And all of the delegates and honorary delegates and designated staffs are the founding members. Brothers and sisters, you'll be signing your first union card in Unifor representing your membership that sent you in here with the understanding that we need to build unity in defense of economic and social justice from behalf of themselves and their families. Then we're going to proceed to adopt the Constitution. To guide us through these important steps, I would like to ask Brother Louis Gotthill from our Director of our Legal Service to come forward and explain each step of the process. And while Louis is coming up here, I hate introducing him as a legal expert because he is a human being with economic and social values that are second to none, and his work in the last 2 weeks and 2 years has been unbelievable. Louis Gotthill.
Morning, brothers and sisters. Thanks, Ken. I really do have the privilege of assisting the convention with respect to the initial steps towards creating our new union, Unifor. I ask you please to ensure you have 2 documents in front of you. Take two documents from your kits. First, please, the draft Constitution. You'll find that in your book called Constitution, Policies and Procedures. It's at tab 1. And Ken's already mentioned the membership document, which we're going to look at just in a moment. Please have that ready and in front of you. In a moment, we're going to consider a motion to adopt the proposed Constitution, but first, we're going to deal with the matter of admitting members to the new union. You'll note, by the way, that the subject of admitting members to our new union at the founding convention is governed by an article in our draft Constitution. It's Article 5, Section B, Paragraph 8, at page 14 of the draft document. Now, I want to add that there are 2 very similar cards that have been printed for today's proceedings. One card is for delegates, or one membership document for the delegates, and a second has been made for honorary delegates and designated staff. The membership document for the delegates has a watermark that says delegate. Et je comprends que...
And I believe a mistake was made, a spelling mistake on the document for the founding member. In French, you have delegate, délégué. I apologize for the mistake, but it in no way jeopardizes the legitimacy of this document.
Everyone who wants to become a founding member of Unifor, please take the membership document. Please begin and please complete that form. Print your name. Provide your signature. And today's date. Every kit should have a pen, by the way.
Ask if everybody's got one.
Does everybody have a pen to help them out?
Everybody got the application.
And does everybody have the form? If not, we'll make sure we provide a form.
Louis, Mike 2.
Yes, brother.
Mike 2, guys.
9/11.
Mike 2.
My name is Terry Johns. I'm from CAP 9/11, and that was my question. Is I don't have a form and a delegate form, and I'd like to know how we get it.
Okay.
Who's the administration team? Who's in charge of it?
That's a good. Yeah, go ahead. Great. Thanks, Michel. Merci, Michel.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, the completion of this form affirms your declaration of support for Unifor and your desire to be a member, and the admission of members is an important part of the creation of a new union. Later, after we deal with or dispose of the motion to adopt the proposed Constitution, the Sergeant-at-Arms will be on the floor to collect these membership documents, and as you can see from the face of the document, tomorrow the permanent founding member cards will be available for pickup. Now, as we move to adopt the Constitution, and as you complete your membership forms, permit me to address briefly a couple of questions. Number one, why do we need a Constitution? Why do we adopt one? And what was the process that led to the document before you? If you have your translation devices, please pick them up. Les statuts du nouveau syndicat.
So the constitution of the new union is important. First of all, it's a document that meets legal requirements in order to establish an organization that represents the workers, an organization that would negotiate on behalf of workers. It is also a declaration of rights, the rights of the members at a collective and at an individual level. Of course, it is a set of rules that describe your union, the one you belong to, and that ensure transparency and accountability in terms of decisions, specifically financial decisions of the union. It is a brief description of the structure of the union, as well as the principles and democratic practices that govern the union. And finally, it is a statement of objectives and goals.
I'd also like to recap the process traveled that we went through to build the new Constitution.
Thank you.
Sorry, mic 6.
Yes, good morning. I'm not sure if this is a point of order, a point of privilege, but it has to be a point of something. I've been here since yesterday. And as a woman of color, I'm getting increasingly frustrated listening to everybody talking about how our new union will be representative. I have yet to see a single woman leader from our membership stand up and speak. I have yet to see a single person of color stand up and say something. And I don't know how this union is going to represent people like me when...
You want to speak to that?
Again, once you pass Unifor, you will see the diversity of the National Executive Board and obviously the officers. And all of us know in those particular areas of equality, we're always going to have some challenging times, but we're committed to diversity, and that's the best I can say. And by you reinforcing that message again reinforces us at the podium here today to contemplate how we build stronger diversity in our union. So that's the best I can do.
If this has been being built for 2 years and the best you can do is say there's work to be done?
That's the best I can do right now, sister. Go ahead.
Come back to the journey we've traveled to build the draft document before you. It was a 15-month journey. It began with the CAW-CEP Proposal Committee, which had meetings through the first half of 2012. That proposal committee was made up of senior leadership of both unions, and it met regularly and issued reports and emails back to local unions, back to the public, to our internal committees and groups, and engaged in discussions and meetings within our organizations, including a first round of regional consultation meetings in the spring of 2012. On August 1st, 2012, the Proposal Committee issued a final report which, amongst other things, set out a blueprint for the basic principles of a proposed constitution, including the makeup of a new National Executive Board, a regional and industry and Quebec Council structure, a statement of principles and objectives. That blueprint was democratically approved at our respective conventions in August and October 2012. And then a Constitution Working Group was given the mandate to draft a new Constitution based upon and faithful to the contents of that Proposal Committee final report. The group also had to address in the new Constitution all the issues not dealt with in the final report and bring together the best of our respective original constitutions and the best of our experiences and our practices. That working group met from December 2012 to May 2013 over the course of at least 15 working days. Brother Michel Remet and Brother Sylvain Martin were among the 14 members of the group drawn from all regions of the country and all segments of our respective unions. Le groupe de travail sur
The Constitution Working Group was supported in its endeavor by a reference group made up of 16 people, mostly officers from the locals across the land. The reference group met jointly with the working group. The reference group was extraordinarily useful in terms of sharing its views and its vision of local unions. When a first draft of the Constitution was put together, all of the major items was prepared and shared with others during consultations, regional consultation meetings in April and May of 2013 across Canada. So officers, activists, all were involved, and their feedback was considerable. There were 4 discussion meetings over the phone for all members of CP and CAW. Thousands of members called in and got involved. Moreover, there were many discussions within our respective unions and within our respective union structures, be it the councils, the national meetings, the local unions, and others.
Results of the consultation meetings and the conferences and reunions, this feedback helped the Constitutional Working Group and our respective leadership on a consensual basis to make some changes and improvements to the draft Constitution. For example, the final draft liberalized the rules concerning delegate entitlement to conventions, permitting local unions to send a special delegate to convention. We changed the rule with respect to the establishment of local union standing committees, granting local unions more discretion with respect to the establishment of those committees. We changed the draft to recognize and incorporate disabled workers as a specific equity-seeking group within the Constitution and within our union going forward. We clarified and we made more flexible the rules with respect to the collection of local union dues. So we've already seen the proof that our Constitution is a living document. In the future, it will be open to change. Future conventions may decide to make changes based on our day-to-day experience, our day-to-day work as trade unionists. But today, after an extensive, after an open and a very transparent process, we should be, and I believe we're ready for a yes or no decision, because we need to establish today a constitutional foundation, a constitutional structure now to allow us to move forward with the important work of this convention and the incredibly important work of our union. So, I trust by now everyone has completed their membership document. The Sergeant at Arms, as I mentioned, will collect them soon after we deal with the motion to adopt the proposed Constitution, and I turn the floor back to Brother Luenza, the Chair, with respect to that motion. Thank you.
And Peter has a reminder on the application itself. So go ahead, Peter. Thank you, Ken. I mentioned earlier that the huge interest in what we're doing here this morning has created a number of logistical issues, not the least of which is the distribution of the founding membership applications. So if anyone has yet to sign a founding membership application, who wants to sign a founding membership application, For those in this room, Francois Gallant will be over in the corner behind column H in the far corner there. You can go there and sign a founding membership application. Similarly, in the overflow room, those there that want to sign such an application, someone will be stationed in that room where you can go and sign a founding membership application, and all those then that want to be founding members of Unifor will be recognized.
Thank you, Peter. Again, I want to thank Louis and the Constitutional Committee, all the leadership in the room, and all of the advice and counseling we've got through the process of full transparency in the last 2 years. And personally, I want to thank you for the incredible role you played in getting us to this point. CAW has been blessed to have an in-house legal counsel department under his leadership. And now Unifor will enjoy the same benefits of his dedication. Louis, thank you. You are not just an incredible lawyer, like I already said, you're an incredible trade unionist. Okay, delegates, this is significant. We have the Constitution. I remind you, this Constitution is the result, as Louis has already indicated, of careful work, deliberations, and great discussion. We are not going to consider any amendments, as Peter or Louis has already said. It is a yes or no vote, and we'll use the voting machines to do such vote. First of all, can I have a mover for the Unifor Constitution as discussed with thousands of workers? Moved, seconded. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? What do I got to do? I got to open it for discussion. Okay. Open it for discussion. Again, it can't be changed, but discussion. Okay. Are we trying the technology again, or what are we doing? Any discussion on call? Okay. So the collection of membership cards. Here it is, brothers and sisters. That's my card. That's my application. And you might notice on the right-hand side is the new Unifor union card. And these things will all be picked up. And then tomorrow, our staff will be working all night to give you a copy of the first Unifor membership card and first Unifor delegate status at this convention. That's not in my books.
We have to have a vote.
So I don't have to have the Sergeant Arms pick these up now? By the machines. Okay, Jason, can you help me out? Where's Jason?
I can help. Peter can help.
Okay, we're going to call the vote now on the Constitution of Unifor. So I'd ask the technicians to pull up the question. Do you vote to adopt the proposed Unifor Constitution? And this, sisters and brothers, is a for or against vote. Can you bring up the question, please?
We were going to do a fourth dummy question.
No. We're ready. But are the cards all, everybody's cards?
Okay. You've had the demonstration about how to vote. The question is before you. We will keep the voting open for 30 seconds. 4, 1. Against, 2. The vote is now open.
So we're going to display the total votes received and the total possible votes. The difference is the split. It couldn't make up the calculation. So you can explain that.
Okay, while you're voting, Jason's going to give you an explanation to that question that was asked, that point of privilege. Come up here, young man, Mr. Tech.
Got a number of hats. I'm also an accountant. So when we display the results, we have made a change for the brother that asked, and certainly that makes sense. So for the privilege of everyone, we will have the total number of votes received, and we will also show the total number of votes possible. Bear with us, guys. We did this on the fly, so we do not have the spoiled difference, but the difference is A minus B. If you want the exact number, come see me at any time. I'll give it to you. But you guys can probably figure it out looking at the screens. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Okay, 10 more seconds in which to vote, and we'll close the vote.
So it's going to go up. And then I ask for the Sergeant at Arms to fix the application.
First, it's going to come right here, Ken.
Okay, the vote is now closed.
Holy.
Can you bring up the results?
Representative, 260,000 people vote. So it's
Delegates, you will remember this day. Now the Sergeant at Arms will go around and pick up the membership cards, and then our staff will work incredibly hard to have your initial sign up of this incredible historic time where you represented the interest of 300,000 workers throughout the country and their families, and you represented the interest by giving the new union a 96% mandate. Absolutely incredible, and we thank you for your support, and we thank our members for having the opportunity to represent them, and we thank our members for having vision and the tenacity to change at a time where we all need the power of a union. Unifor! 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 Unifor!
Now we got the union, man. Now we just have to merge into it. No, absolutely. Oh. Give me back my membership.
No. You got your badge? Peel that off.
What do you want me to do? Just see what happens. Tear it off.
Okay, brothers and sisters, the next significant point. Please stand up if you have your badge. If you have your badge, if you have your identification thing, please stand up for a minute. Stand up for a minute. Yep. And I want you to, with the greatest amount of respect for your history, turn to the future. Take the front of your badge where mine says, I love the CAW, but I'm now committed to Unifor. By flipping it over, take that badge off, and you will have Unifor. Unifor. You got it? Now take your old badge, put it in the pouch, love it, respect it, but move forward with vision, determination, and commitment under Unifor. Thank you very much. Okay, brothers and sisters, please be patient. Please be patient. I know it was an exciting couple of minutes. Actually, it's been an exciting couple of years. We're shortly going to have a very important guest speaker that's going to send us a clear message on the views of the labor movement. In your kits, again, we have those special acrylic stands. Just to remind you, the permanent cards will fit into those stands as a permanent souvenir. And that will be a wonderful opportunity to share with you and your family and your membership on this historic day. So please sign your cards in the bins, and then tomorrow at the tables outside you can pick up your permanent card and keep it in that special holder. At this particular time, during the course of the convention, we're going to show messages from our friends and colleagues. And at this particular time, once we settle down, we're going to have a very special guest speaker before we break for lunch. So go ahead. Our first preliminary messages from important people in our union. Go ahead.
As I stand here taping this celebratory moment, there are three things rummaging around at the back of my mind. First, this is now the largest and undoubtedly one of the most principled of trade unions in the country, which will give primacy to the mandate of collective bargaining for its workers. Second, I have no doubt that you'll continue to be rooted, consistent with the past, in the communities in which your members reside. And third, there's no question that you'll continue to support those social justice causes and human rights struggles of working people around the world. What more could you ask from a trade union, except perhaps continued support for the new Democratic Party? I salute you. Onward, Unifor.
My name is Brian Payne. I'm CEP President, retired. Wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate the membership and leadership, both unions, CEP and CAW, for taking the bold step forward, such a strategic, important move, the merger that will strengthen the members' rights, obviously, but will also enhance the labor movement and workers' rights across Canada. It's a great day. I'm pleased to be able to add my comments at this important time.
Let me just say to the delegates how proud I am to be here at the founding convention of this great new union. I was here when we set up the Canadian Union in 1985. I've been part of so many changes in our union, many, many mergers of people all across the country. We built a real national organization. And now to see this merger come together and to clearly have the largest private sector union in Canada, and the strength and the solidarity and the benefits that brings to our members, their families and communities, and the broader labor movement, I couldn't be more proud.
Hi, I'm Maude Barlow. On behalf of the team and all the members across the country of the Council of Canadians, I want to say congratulations and welcome to this wonderful new union. This is one of the most exciting developments in the history of unions in our country. We at the Council have partnered with CEP and CAW for many years, and we look so forward to continuing the partnership with the new union in communities for social justice, economic, trade justice, climate justice. We're very excited. I'm most particularly excited because you're going to be moving into these community chapters, and we do that. We have over 70 chapters, activist chapters across the country, and they are very excited to work with you. The only way we're going to take on the Harper agenda and everything it means is if we partner working people, unionized people, civil society groups of all kinds. And this all comes together as we're really moving along with Common Causes, which is this new community of movements that is bringing all the sectors together to really stand up for a different progressive Canada, the Canada we deserve. So welcome to you. I'm very excited. This is a very wonderful development, and I look forward to many more years of working with you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, Brian, Maude Barlow. And I do want to raise to the convention delegates that Buzz Hargrove recently had some medical challenges, had successful surgery, but isn't available to be here. But as I said to Buzz as late as yesterday, the spirit of Buzz Hargrove will always be in the hearts and minds of union leadership in this room. So Buzz, we wish you a speedy recovery and can't wait to see you at our next convention. At this particular time, brothers and sisters, we are blessed. And we are blessed because the labor movement can't, in isolation, send a message out to Canadians about the importance of the union. So we've asked Alan Craig, Canadian pollster and pundit. Alan Craig is one of Canada's best-known public opinion experts and political analysts. He is familiar to millions of Canadians through his appearance on At Issue panel on CBC TV with Peter Mansbridge. Alan, your perspectives and insights of that show are incredible, and we appreciate it. Alan has worked in many different capacities over the years in polling, consulting, broadcasting.
Alan even worked for several years as a pollster for the federal Tories. We won't use that against you. But Alan, we won't hold that against you. Oh, that was in my notes. Oh, because you have proven over the years and every week on CBC that your views are not partisan. You are an independent and original. You call them as you see them. And more recently, you've had some very strong, very powerful things to say about the nature of politics in our country. Such as that article you wrote last year called The Assault on Reason. Alan, that was a real bombshell and a wake-up call to all Canadians. I encourage all of you to look up this article on the internet, an assault on reason. It is a brave, principled statement from a truly patriotic Canadian about the decline of democracy and the problems with negative, divisive wedge politics. Let me just read one small quote from that article. These are Alan's words. A fearful, divided citizenship fights off uncertainty by protecting its own turf. Politicians exploit this division by choosing sides and offering a simplistic solution to address these fears. And the population seeks solace in the simplistic solutions. So instead of trying to bridge these differences through consensus and finding compromise based on reason, what we see all too often today is the politics of polarization, over-torqued partisanship, and dogma. This pretty well sums it up. All right, that explains the mess we are in. We have invited Alan here today to talk about unions, the future of unions, as we are going to talk about also, and how Canadians can see unions. It's no surprise, of course, that unions have portrayed as public enemy number one by employers and politicians and some commentators, people like Kevin O'Leary, for example. It's amazing to me that a guy is even on the air every day, but Alan has surveyed Canadians carefully. Some of his findings will surprise you and possibly even inspire you. So, delegates, please join with me in welcoming Alan Gregg that will send us an inspirational message of hope and opportunity. Alan Craig, welcome to Unifor.
Hi, Alan. How are you, buddy? Good to see you.
I say this in a very heartfelt way, that it is a singular honor to be here on Labor Day weekend as an invited guest to participate in this historic event. Thank you. Now, while honored, I have to tell you that when Ken first called, I had to ask myself, why would he be inviting me? I'm not an expert in the labor movement. I'm not even a union member. The first, rather depressing conclusion I came to was that maybe he invited me because over the course of my professional career, I've appeared frequently on television. Now, I raise this not out of vanity. In fact, anyone who's ever appeared on television with any kind of frequency would tell you that it's almost always an exercise in humiliation more than flattery. But that said, there's no question that television bestows an authority upon those who appear on it. And the more you appear on television, the more you come to realize that that authority is kind of bizarre. And it's bizarre not simply because it often defies your talent. It's bizarre because it defines logic. Every Thursday night for over a decade on CBC, faced with an unanticipated, unscripted event, after all, that's what news is, somehow we were supposed to be able to predict the future. We were supposed to be clairvoyants, tell people what was going to happen next. I'll give you a hypothetical example of how ridiculous it could become. Let's say today God summoned the President of China, the President of the United States, and the Prime Minister of Canada up to heaven, whereupon he informed them that he was absolutely disgusted with their management of his kingdom. Environmental degradation, racial, religious tensions, the marginalization of the labor movement in Canada were all so abysmal in his view that he had made an unequivocal decision to destroy mankind in 2 weeks and start all over again. It was now left to these individuals to go get their respective constituencies ready for the coming apocalypse. So Peter would turn to me and say, Alan, what's going to happen now? Well, you get the gig because you do the homework and you get some understanding of individuals who might be the subject of news, so you have some context to kind of at least guess in some quasi-learned way. And I don't know that much about the president of China, but he seems to be a rather dour individual, so I'm going to predict that he's going to get on television and say, ladies and gentlemen, I have bad news and even worse news. The bad news is, I've just discovered God exists. Even worse news, in 2 weeks, no China. Barack Obama, he's all about nuance. I mean, it's always black, gray, it's never really, he's always kind of between the 45-yard line, never really in the end zone. So I think he's going to get on television and say, ladies and gentlemen, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is, I've just discovered God exists. The bad news is, in 2 weeks, no United States of America. Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, he's a little bit different kettle of fish. I mean, he's not a natural kind of outgoing, garrulous, backslapping politician. He has a tendency to get his elbows up and be a little bit partisan, and it hurts his image, I think. And so I think his advisors are going to get around him and say, Prime Minister, it's really important today that you try to make the best out of what is obviously a bad situation. And I think in this instance, Stephen Harper's actually going to take his advisors' advice. He's going to get on television and say, ladies and gentlemen, I have good news and even better news. The good news is, God thinks I'm a world leader. Even better news, that little Justin Trudeau, he's never going to be Prime Minister of this country. Now, I didn't come here to talk about the travails of appearing on television. I came here today because lately I've been talking about some troubling trends in the nature of our political discourse and the way public policy decisions are made that I believe threaten some foundational values that many in this room hold as dear as I do. It seems as though our government's use of evidence and fact as the basis of policy is declining, and in their place, dogma, whim, and political expediency is on the rise. And even more troubling, especially for a public opinion pollster, Canadians seem to be, if not actively buying it, certainly passively accepting it. No, I'm not a union member, so I might come at this problem from a bit of a different perspective. But I believe nonetheless that you and I have an equal, vested interest in fighting back against this trend. I've spent my entire professional life as a researcher, dedicated to understanding the relationship between cause and effect. And in that capacity over the years, I've come to believe that more than anything else, societal progress is advanced by enlightened public policy that marshals our collective resources together towards a larger public good. But in the end, it's not just the desire to pursue a larger public good that leads to progress. Invariably, it has been reason and scientific evidence that has delineated effective from ineffective policy. As researchers, we know that effective solutions can only be generated when they correspond to an accurate understanding of the problems they are designed to solve. Evidence, facts, and reason, therefore, form the sine qua non of not only good policy, but good government. My concern was first piqued in July 2010, when the federal government cabinet announced its decision to cut the mandatory long-form census and replace it with a voluntary one. The rationale for this curious decision was that asking questions for information about things like how many bathrooms were in their home somehow was a needless intrusion on citizens' privacy and liberty. One might reasonably wonder how knowledge about the number of toilets you have in your home could enable governments to invade your privacy, but that aside, it also soon became clear that virtually no toilet owners had ever before voiced any concerns that the long-form census and its toilet questions posed this kind of threat to their liberty or freedom. As someone who had used the census, both as a commercial researcher and when I worked on Parliament Hill in the Library of Canada, I knew how important these data were in identifying not just toilet counts, but shifting population trends and the changes in the quantity and quality of life of Canadians. How could you conceivably determine, for example, how many units of affordable housing were needed unless you knew the change in the number of people who qualified for affordable housing? How could you assess the appropriate costs of affordable housing unless you knew the change in the amount of disposable income available to eligible recipients? Even creepier, why would anyone forsake these valuable insights and the chance to make good public policy under the pretense of rights being violated when no one ever voiced any concern that this was happening. You know, I asked myself, was this just kind of one-off move, however misguided, or was this maybe a little canary in the mine shaft? Then came the long gun registry. The federal government made good on their promise to dismantle it, regardless of the fact that virtually every police chief in the country said it was important to their work. Being true to their election promises? Or was something else driving this decision? Then came the promise of a massive penitentiary construction spree, which flew directly in the face of mountains of evidence indicating that crime was actually on the decline. This struck me as costly, unnecessary move, but knowing the government's penchant to define itself as tough on crime, one could see at least ideologically why they did it. But you still had to ask, did that make it right? Then came the post-stimulus federal budget of last year, which I eagerly awaited to see if there was something more here than mere political opportunism. It was common knowledge that this government had little stomach for the deficit spending that followed the financial crisis of 2008-2009, and knowing that the public supported a return to balanced budgets, it was a foregone conclusion that we were going to be presented with a fairly austere budget document. That the government intended to cut 19,000 civil service jobs, roughly 6% of the total federal workforce, might have seemed a little draconian, but knowing what we knew, not really that shocking. As part of the package, it also announced that environmental assessments heretofore were going to be streamlined, in quotes, and that final arbitration powers of independent regulators, where it had rested in the past, was to be curtailed and possibly overridden by so-called accountable elected officials. Again, given the priority this government places on economic and especially resource development, this was not necessarily unpredictable either. But when the specific cuts started to roll out, post-budget, it became clear that something else was beginning to take shape. First up were those toilet counting privacy violators at StatsCan. One half, not 6%, but 50% of employees in StatsCan were warned that their jobs were at risk. 20% of the workforce at my own employer, the Library and Archives of Canada, were put on notice. In what was described by the Globe and Mail as the lobotomization of the park system, the operating budgets of Park Canada was cut, eliminating 638 positions, 70% of whom would be scientists and social scientists. The National Roundtable on the Environment, the First Nations Statistical Institute, the National Council on Welfare, and the Canadian Foundation for Climate and Atmospheric Science were all, in Orwellian parlance, vaporized. Grand total savings, $7.5 million. The Experimental Lakes area, a research station that produced critical evidence that helped stop acid rain 3 decades ago and has been responsible for some of our most groundbreaking research on water quality, was to be shut down. And while the governments of Manitoba and Ontario have stepped up to try to save the Experimental Lakes area, its fate as we speak is still in question. The savings, $2 million. The northernmost lab in Eureka, Nunavut, awaits the same fate now. The units in charge of monitoring emissions from power plants, furnaces, boilers, and other sources were to be abolished in order to save $600,000. And against the advice of no less than 625 fishery scientists and 4 former federal fisheries ministers, all saying that it was scientifically impossible to do, regulatory oversight of the fisheries was heretofore to be limited only to stock that were of, in quotes, human value, whatever that means. To add insult to injury, these amendments were bundled in with 68 other laws into one budget bill so that using the power of majority government, no single item could be opposed or revoked. On the other side of the ledger, however, there was one spending increase. It went to Canada Revenue Agency, who received an additional $8 million increase in its budget so that it had more resources available to investigate the political activities of not-for-profitable and charitable organizations. Okay, so now the facts were beginning to tell a different story. This was no random act or across-the-board act of downsizing, but a deliberate attempt to obliterate certain activities that were previously viewed as legitimate part of government decision-making, namely using research, science, and evidence as the basis to guide policy decisions. It also amounted to an attempt to eliminate anyone who might use science, facts, and evidence to challenge government policies. Now, I did most of this research last fall, but since then, there's been very little in the government's behavior, that would suggest to me that they're going to abandon these tendencies anytime soon. Just 4 months ago, Canada became the only country of 194 others to withdraw from the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, a program set up to find ways to stop the spread of droughts and lay waste to farmlands across the planet. Claiming it was little more than a, in quotes, talk fest, by backing out of this convention, the federal government was able to save the Canadian taxpayer, guess what, a grand total of $315,000, or slightly under 1 cent for every taxpayer in the nation. Now, I don't know about you, but I trust the sensibilities of average Canadians, and I think if I asked them to give me 1 cent in order to reverse arable lands turning to desert and participate with 194 other countries, they would think that was a pretty good expenditure of their taxpayers' dollar. And what did this windfall of savings buy us? Basically, the opprobrium of the international community. Robert Fowler, Canada's former ambassador to the United Nations, said the abandonment of the convention amounts to, in quotes, a departure from global citizenship, and claimed that Canada's nose-thumbing at efforts to tame a very present threat to hundreds of millions of the world's poorest and most desperate people is nothing short of incomprehensible. Well, it might be incomprehensible to Robert Fowler, but I think our friend Maud Barlow of the Canadian Council of Canadians had a pretty concise and accurate understanding of the motive behind this decision when she said, and I quote, "Anything that can lead to more evidence that we're a planet in crisis environmentally, they don't want to be part of. They simply do not want this information coming forward." More recently, again, the University of Victoria's Environmental Law Clinic has asked the Federal Information Commissioner to investigate claims that scientists continue to be prohibited from speaking freely to the press, claiming that this in turn deprives citizens of their right to know, and in the end, again I quote, impoverishes the public debate on issues of national significance. Now, typically, the abandonment of reason is almost always twinned, not with simple, unthinking orthodoxy, but also by the willful dissemination of misinformation. And today, more and more, we see this same kind of misdirection and newspeak in the behavior of our legislators. A quick review of some of the bills passed on or on the order paper of the last session of Parliament gives you a sense that this government might have studied under George Orwell. Bill C-5 was entitled the Continuing Air Service for Passengers Act. Substantively, it offered no such guarantee. Instead, it unilaterally extended the contract of the National Automobile, Aerospace, Transport and General Workers Union of Canada and removed any prospect of a lockout or strike. Of particular interest to the people in this room is the fact that this was but one of 4 pieces of legislation in the last Parliament that threatened or introduced back-to-work legislation before the workers in question even had the opportunity to exercise their right to strike. Bill C-10, it goes on, is an act to enact the Justice for Victims of Terrorism and subtitled the Safe Streets and Communities Act. Again, forgetting for a moment that there have been more victims of swimming pool drowning accidents than terrorism over the last year. This is an omnibus bill which, among other things, stiffened penalties for possession of pot and builds more prisons. Bill C-18 is called the Marketing Freedom for Grain Farmers Act. It dismantled the Canadian Wheat Board. Bill C-26 boasted it is the Citizens Arrest and Self-Defense Act, and it is the closest we come in Canada to replicating Florida's odious Stand Your Ground legislation. The purpose of Bill C-30 is stated to be the Protect the Children from Internet Predators Act, and it, among other things, forces Internet service providers to hand over their users' names to police without a warrant. When opponents protested this deliberate obfuscation, then Safety Minister Vic Tays famously countered that you're either with us or the child pornographers. But in the midst of all this obfuscation, there was one bill whose title was very simple and straightforward. Bill C-377, an act simply to amend the Income Tax Act. Like the rest, however, this private member's bill had a more ominous intent. namely to force all labor organizations to file and publicize very detailed financial reports, and like the not-for-profit sector, laid the groundwork for future attacks on political and campaign activities by unions. This legislation was already passed by the House of Commons, and if not for the heroic act of Hugh Segal in the Senate, would be law today, but it isn't. The thing that's disconcerting and settling for me about all of this is not just the substance of these bills. That is debatable on a whole other front. But why the government will want to disguise that substance. You know, maybe dismantling the wheat board or preemptively squashing collective bargaining or sending more potheads to jail is a good thing. But before we make those decisions, let's look at the facts. Let's have a fulsome and rational debate and make a reasoned decision of what is in the best interests of all the parties involved, in the public good. For voters to determine whether these are measures they support or oppose, that would require that they know what is at stake and what the government is actually doing. Moreover, for the rule of law to work, the public must have respect for the law. By obfuscating the true purpose of laws under the gobbledygook of doublespeak, governments are admitting that their intentions probably lack both support and respect. Now, I'm neither hysterical nor a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that this particular government is pursuing a not-so-hidden agenda. It starts with the premise that the Canadian political pendulum has overswung in the direction of liberalism, that the political agenda and discourse of this country for too long has been hijacked by urban elites who, by the way, include union bosses, and who do not represent the voices of hard-working men and women who live in the burbs, shop at Canadian Tire, and take their kids to the hockey rink every week. And I do believe that Stephen Harper and his colleagues have set out to systematically right what they see as a wrong and to swing that pendulum in another direction. And I also believe that theirs is a stark departure from any agenda we have ever seen government pursue in the past in this country. Their view holds that parks are not primarily part of a larger, fragile ecosystem that must be protected by scientists. For them, parks are for tourism, hunters, and campers. Policy should be based on conviction, not bloodless statistics. Government should be guided by what they believe is morally right, and not by reason and rational compromise. From this view, science, statistics, reason, and rational compromise are not tools of enlightened public policy, but barriers to the pursuit of swinging that pendulum back. The problem is, notwithstanding a fairly widespread consensus around orthodoxies that balanced budgets are good things, that market economies are the way to go, free trade is a good thing, Canadians by and large still believe in tolerance, compromise, and egalitarianism. We tend to see ourselves as each other's keeper, and we feel that we have a responsibility for those who are less fortunate. So to realize that agenda, it becomes necessary to pursue it by stealth and circumvention, rather than through transparency and directness. This too explains the apparent obsession with secrecy, message control, and misdirection we see in Ottawa. But even if you accept this thesis, it still begs another question. If Canadians continue to be essentially enlightened progressives and are not prepared to offer wholesale buy-in to this vision of politics in the nation, why do we not hear a hue and cry and protest over the direction we are being led? At root, I think the answer is that this is part of a larger cultural problem. For decades following the Second World War, a progress ethos dominated North American thought. The next car was going to be faster, the next house was going to be bigger, the next paycheck was going to be fatter. And the union movement was part of that ethos. The notion that progress was both normal and limitless generated a series of beliefs that were universally embraced throughout North America. Anyone of my generation would remember being told, "You, my child, deserve more than I had when I was growing up. If you work hard and put your mind to it, you can be anything you want in this country. And a good education is the key to success in the future." This value system, and an experience that closely corresponded to it, created not only a sense of well-being, that I'm doing well financially, but also a sense of goodwill. If the prospects of progress and success were limitless, then whatever success you enjoyed no way threatened the amount of success that might be available to me. Today, in sharp contrast, we seem to be living in a zero-sum society, where the prevailing wisdom is that the rich are getting richer while the poor are getting poorer, that whatever prosperity might be available is being unequally shared, and that for many, opportunity is actually shrinking. In the same way that feelings of well-being can generate goodwill, feelings of threat spawn envy and recrimination. This not only explains the anger of the Occupy and the Idle No More movements of the students who were protesting on the streets of Montreal last summer, but also the disdain that the middle class seems to have for pampered public sector employees, or the excessive obsession the rich seem to have about welfare recipients ripping off the system. Once the population starts to segment itself into us versus them, anyone with a vested interest in exacerbating that rift can easily till that soil. And that is clearly what is happening in the political process today. On one hand, political parties no longer see the need to reach out and expand their base beyond their core constituency, because their core constituency is often at odds with those very voters whom they might otherwise want to attract. To the contrary, it makes more sense to vilify these voters as a way to motivate your own core. A vicious cultural wheel, therefore, is turned by a political one. The risk of re-quoting myself, Ken, a fearful, divided citizenry fights off uncertainty by protecting its own turf. Politicians exploit this division by choosing sides and offering simplistic solutions to address these fears. And the population seeks solace in the simplistic solutions. So instead of trying to bridge these differences, as we always have through consensus and finding compromise based on reason, what we see all too often today is the politics of polarization, over-torqued partisanship, and dogma. And the perfect trifecta of 1, a zero-sum society, 2, the politics of division, and 3, the assault on reason, plays out in the real work of politics by politicians forcing false choices on the public and seeking to reduce their insecurity, placing themselves on one side of the choice or the other. Everyone in this room knows that unions frequently find themselves positioned on the extreme of these false choices. How is this for a false choice trap? In order for the middle class to prosper today, we must introduce right-to-work legislation. Now, we all know that this is an argument that has no basis in logic at all. In fact, you don't have to be an economist to know that it isn't tax breaks to business or even entrepreneurs or innovation that create prosperity or jobs. There's only one thing that creates prosperity and jobs, and that is when working class men and women have sufficient disposable income to buy shit. That's when an economy grows. If that prima facie condition does not exist, you can have all the tax breaks, you can have all the entrepreneurs, you can have all the innovation that you want in this world, and the economy will be stalled dead. And while the argument used to advance right-to-work legislation has no basic in logic, this is precisely what has happened in Wisconsin, is being proposed right here in Ontario by PC leader Tim Hudak. Feeling that opportunity for you or your family is diminishing, or that you're not getting your fair share of the opportunity that might be available? Well, look at those union members with their cushy pensions and pension plans. Again, this is the zero-sum society being exploited. And as if my opportunity somehow might be enhanced by reducing someone else's. That makes no sense whatsoever. But that is the political reality of the consequences of the assault on reason. Reason ceases to be at play, and in its place, prejudice, fear, and wishful thinking takes its place. So unions, probably more than most, have cause to be defenders of reason. Now, I know that many of you feel under siege, or that the union movement has lost so much credibility and support that it is not in a position to fight back against this tide. Well, I'm here to tell you that the hill you climb, while steep, can be breached, and that the playing field is not as uneven as you may think. The fact is that while confidence in the union movement may have eroded over the last 3 decades, so has confidence in all traditional authority and institutions. It's not like organized religion, business, or governments are in better odor today than they were decades earlier. Not at all. And the reason for this is shockingly straightforward. Because citizens are increasingly unwilling to follow their leaders because they no longer believe those leaders share their values and concerns. And worse, that they are advancing their own interests, often at the expense of the people they are supposed to serve. So while this public opinion environment is as toxic as we've ever seen it, trust me, it is no worse for unions, and the test that is put to unions is no worse than any other major sectors of society. In fact, when asked, as we recently did for Ken and a group that sat around for dinner one night, in a national study of public opinion, 6 in 10 Canadians say they have at least some, if not a lot, of confidence in the people who run union movements. 6 out of 10. A greater number than those who claim they have confidence in the people who run multinationals. Perhaps more importantly, even a higher number, 7 out of 10, of activists and people who follow politics closely express confidence in union leadership. 2/3 of the population support the principle of a labor union's right to strike. Interestingly, and I think importantly, because I think some have given up on this age cohort, that number is even higher among young people between the ages of 18 and 34. A similar number, 7 out of 10, would advise a young person that they should become a member of a labor union. It might surprise you, even 56% of current conservative voters would pass along that same advice to a young person. 60% of the electorate also holds the view that union members' wages and benefits are higher than those of the average Canadian. But a slightly larger number, 70%, believe that when union leaders advance their members' interests, they are also considering what is in the public interest at least some, if not all of the time. Now, in their own way, all these numbers should be viewed as encouraging. But when you start mashing them all together and conducting more in-depth analysis as we do, a surprising and very important pattern begins to emerge. What drives confidence in union, this analysis shows? What drives support for the right to strike? What drives a willingness to recommend young people to join a union is not the perceptions that unions are able to derive better than average wages and benefits for their members. In fact, the opposite is true. The more they are likely to believe that union members have higher than average wages and benefits, the lower the confidence in unions, the lower the support of the right to strike, and the lower the likelihood to remember joining is. That's because the benefit is to them, not necessarily us, says the average Canadian. What does drive the public agenda, your public agenda, is how likely Canadians are to believe that you are pursuing the public interest in tandem with the interests of your members. Support for unions, confidence in unions, support for the right to strike, likelihood to recommend a young person join, all is highly correlated with whether or not you believe this is what the union is doing. In other words, you are being evaluated by the public not so much by what you achieve around the bargaining table as what you're going to be able to achieve in the public square. Now, I have no doubt that the joining of 2 great unions at this historic convention and the commitment to social unionism and broader social change for all Canadians, members or not, is the first step to regaining public trust and relevance. But as important as this first step is going to be, it's equally important to make sure that you do not allow yourself, either through neglect or your own activity, to add fuel to those who would make you part of the false choice and pit the interests of the union movement against the interests of the public. In fact, in this environment, it is more important than ever to demonstrate that not only what is good for the union movement is good for Canada, but what is good for Canada is good for the union movement.
Right on.
You're going to have to demonstrate and remind the public that providing goods and services is what you do. That is why you exist, to serve the public, and that withdrawing them is an aberration and a last resort. And your voice must be heard again in the debate and resolution of issues that actually matter to the public. Look what's happening to youth unemployment since the recession. Not only is it stubbornly and unconscionably high, but for the first time in modern memory, university and college graduates are unable to find meaningful jobs and start a career. Who better than Unifor and the union movement to lead an initiative with governments, yes, and business, and post-secondary educators to end this travesty? By any measure, it's clear that the recent Canada Job Grant is either not going to get off the ground at all or is going to be an unmitigated disaster. And why should this surprise anyone? A policy that calls upon the federal government, provincial government, and businesses to each pony up $50,000 to train a worker, $5,000 to train a worker, without labor at the table, is doomed to fail. Now, I'm not an expert, But the notion that a business executive at Ford Motor Company has a better understanding of the training needs of an auto worker than a foreman on the assembly line floor strikes me as ludicrous. We've seen a similar fiasco in the foreign workers program that both exploits foreign workers and takes jobs away from Canadians. Again, who better to be at the forefront of all policies that relate to labor forecasting than the union movement? And while you're at it, why not become the face of a new pragmatic environmentalism, one that exposes the false choice myth that we must choose between economic growth and environment? Not only is the union movement and Unifor uniquely positioned to take on the mantle of issues such as this, but by entering the public arena, armed with reason, and committing to advancing a larger good, you will be doing Canada and Canadians a great and much-needed service. After this weekend, the eyes of the nation will be on you. And if they like what they see, their hearts and minds will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's obvious to me that the delegates appreciate your message and appreciate the reality that you understand the challenges and will work with us for a better Canada. On behalf of the Unifor Union, I want to give you this gift as a token of our appreciation. I want to thank you for your work on public policy initiatives. I want to thank you for your voice, and I want you to thank you for being the first guest speaker at the Unifor Convention. Thank you very much.
Have a great convention.
Okay, brothers and sisters, again, we're just going to take 6 or 7 more minutes before I break for lunch. But we have some very important messages from important friends, and then we'll contemplate expanding the growth of our stomachs. Up here.
Hi, I'm Tom Mulcair. I just want to tell you how excited I am, how excited all New Democrats are about the creation of your new union. The CIW and CEP have played such a vital role in giving workers in Canada a voice, in engaging in the political process and getting results for working men and women right across this great country. I've no doubt that working together, you'll accomplish even more. The labor movement in Canada today faces great challenges, and we'll have to be ready. In Ottawa, we face a government that doesn't understand that workers are the backbone of our economy. In Stephen Harper's Canada, labor is seen as an impediment to profits, one that must be overcome. New Democrats are standing up to conservative attacks on collective bargaining, on workers' rights, and on fair wages. And we're doing it with your help. I look forward to working with the new union, just as we always have. Brothers and sisters, together we can improve the lives of working men and women from coast to coast to coast. And together we can build the Canada of our dreams, not just for today, but for generations to come. Thank you. Bonjour, ici Thomas Mulcair.
Tom Mulcair, I would just want to tell you that I'm very happy. I am happy, and all New Democrats are very happy with the creation of this new union. The CAW and the CEP allowed workers to be heard, to commit themselves in the political process, and in order to improve the lives of all Canadians. There is no doubt that by uniting your strengths, you'll be able to accomplish even more. At the NPD, we have the same vision. Let's work together. The Canadian Union movement has many challenges, and we must be ready to confront them. In Canada, we have a government that does not understand that workers really underlie the economy. They are seen as a problem that must be eliminated. The New Democrats are fighting back on the attacks on wages and benefits, and we are doing it with your help day after day, and I'm anticipating working with you as we've always done. Brothers and sisters, together we can improve the living conditions of all workers in Canada, and together we can build the Canada we've been dreaming of for generations to come. Thank you.
Congratulations to Unifor, the CEP and the CAW who has come together to better represent Canadians and their labor rights in Canada. I am very, very happy to know that this will be happening, that hundreds of thousands of Canadians will be able to have fair and equitable representation as workers in the field. It's also YWCA Canada's pleasure to congratulate you on this incredible achievement, because we know that it is when we work together that we can have a better society that works for everyone. The YWCA Canada is an organization that represents thousands of women and children and their families across the country, where we provide violence prevention programs, sheltering and housing and childcare. Through this work, and with the support of CAW in the past, we've been able to provide a fresh start to many women who are starting over because of the issue of violence in their lives. We look forward to a continued working relationship and partnership where we can better respond to the needs of women, girls, and their families in Canada. Congratulations on this incredible achievement.
Dear sisters and brothers, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to bring you a warm greeting of solidarity from Industrial Global Union, which represents 50 million workers in energy, mining and manufacturing in 140 countries. You, members of Unifor, are an important part of our global trade union family. In a globalized world without borders, we need each other more than ever. Only by joining the forces of workers on all 5 continents can we with success fight for better lives for workers and their families worldwide. Unifor's founding organizations have understood that an injury to one is an injury to all worldwide. You had supported the oil workers in Colombia, in the world's most dangerous country for trade unionists. You have helped Industry All to build stronger unions in Mozambique, and the list goes on. I look forward to your continued support. But we need you to organize and grow in Canada. We need you to fight for a strong manufacturing base for Canada that makes things. And we need you to participate in our trade union networks in multinational companies to build a strong counterpower. Dear colleagues, I wish you best success in the valuable work that you are doing around Canada, but also as citizens of the world. Global solidarity forever.
Sisters and brothers, it's my great privilege to bring greetings to this historic convention on behalf of the 625,000 members of CUPE. To number 1, say congratulations for bringing this project to fruition, and to number 2, say you'll always have a friend in the Canadian Union of Public Employees. I see benefits far and wide for your membership, for unorganized workers in Canada, for our broader labor movement, and for Canada as a whole. We need this strong new union. It's a shot in the arm, and we need to continue the history of your social union roots to build a better Canada, to defend public services, and our joint goal of good jobs for everyone. I want to salute Dave Coles and Ken Loenza. Your leadership has brought this to fruition, and I want to say in closing, CUPE members from coast to coast are very positive about this initiative. We need to work together to build a better Canada, and this historic convention is day 1 of that project. Consoeurs et confrères, félicitations et bonne chance.
Wow, wow. Thank you, Tom Mulcair, Paulette Sr., Yerke Reyna, who we hear from later, and our good friend and colleague, Paul Moyse. Thank you all very, very much. Anyway, at this particular time, I just want to remind the young people from up to age 35, which includes those that feel up to 35, because I'm going to this caucus of young workers in room 713 at this particular meeting. And brothers and sisters, before I pass the chair on to David Coles, who's going to take on the responsibility of the elections after lunch and let the new union leadership team take over, let me give you this message. Love your union. Love the people that you represent. Bring that family commitment to your organization. Build communities. Build our country. Make everybody in Canada feel wanted and appreciated as we fight for social justice. You have collectively changed my life, and I will be forever grateful. Thank you. And now it's 2:15. Back to 2:15. Okay, we have accomplished a lot this morning, sisters and brothers. We have gone beyond by 1/2 an hour the time for adjournment. We have a lot more to do. We will not extend the lunch break by a 1/2 hour. We will compromise it. We will extend by 15 minutes, so we will reconvene at 2:15. Thank you very much for a wonderful, wonderful morning.